Chapter 261. Listening to Ji Bin's words, Ji Dong's mind spun like lightning. Someone robbed the Bartender's Guild? And for what purpose? One had to know that the most precious thing in the Bartender's Guild should be wine. Killing and robbing for wine was too much. Moreover, the ones who were involved were all magicians. There must be some secret behind this. Ji Bin continued. The Bartender's Guild is also a first-class association, and the headquarters is located in the capital of our North Water Empire. After this incident, the Empire's royal family was furious and ordered a strict investigation. Entry and exit of Tianshui City were restricted. The god of wine Du Sikong was even more furious. Even the old man's family was robbed. That's why there was this city gate inspection. Are you going to our guild? Let me take you there. Ji Dong roughly understood the ins and outs of the matter. He shook his head at Ji Bin and said, "No need. We can enter the city by ourselves. Thank you for telling me." Ji Bin and another magician sent Ji Dong into the city. He did not return to the city gate to assist in the inspection. Instead, he went directly to the Tianshui City branch of the Magician Guild. How could he not report the arrival of the Elder of Law Enforcement? Walking into Tianshui City, Ji Dong was not in the mood to appreciate the deep and noble architecture. He said to the flaming bar, "It's better to come at the right time than to come early. I didn't expect that we would come across the Bartender's Guild in trouble. It seems that we can't go and challenge them. They are in trouble now. Challenging them at this time would be taking advantage of them. Flaming bar, I have to take care of this matter. Although I don't think much of the Bartender's Guild's bartending ability, we are still of the same origin. Senior is also the vice president of the Bartender's Guild. No matter what, I have to intervene in this matter. If I can help the headquarters solve this matter, it won't be too late to challenge the god of wine Du Sikong." The flaming bar smiled and said, "You can make the decision. Are we going to the headquarters now?" Ji Dong shook his head and said, "There's no need to rush. Let's find a place to stay first. You and Ajin can rest. I'll go to the Bartender Guild to investigate." Just now, Ji Bin said that the thief left a letter for Du Sikong. I believe that this letter has a lot to do with the ins and outs of the whole matter. We have to figure out the situation first. The streets of Tianshui City were bustling with people, and no tension could be seen at all. Ji Dong found a very luxurious hotel to stay. Like before, he also asked for a large suite. Of course, as his trust in Ajin deepened, the flaming bar and Ajin naturally stayed in the inner room, while Ji Dong cultivated on the sofa outside. After settling down the flaming bar and Ajin, Ji Dong immediately walked out of the hotel. To avoid misunderstanding, he did not inquire about the location of the Bartender's Guild. Instead, he directly bought a map of Tianshui City. After looking at it carefully, he could not help but be speechless. Could it be that this Tianshui City was not fortified? The Bartender's Guild was located on the north side of Tianshui City. It was only 3 streets away from the North Water Empire's palace. It could be said that the thief had ransacked the Bartender's Guild at the entrance of the North Water Empire's palace. It was really doubtful whether the palace could withstand the attack. After all, Tianshui City was not as big as Zhongyuan City. It did not take long for Ji Dong to find the Bartender's Guild according to the directions on the map. From afar, he could already see the special building. The Bartender's Guild was an extremely tall building in the shape of a wine bottle. It was taller than the surrounding buildings. If one were to calculate the number of floors, it would probably be 7. The bottle-shaped building was thick at the bottom and thin at the top. The whole body appeared to be a strange amber color. It was unknown how the building was made, but one could vaguely see that there were faint ripples of water inside the amber-colored wine bottle. It was very strange. It could be said that the Bartender's Guild itself was one of the landmarks of Tianshui City. There were no soldiers guarding this place. It had been ransacked, so there was no point in guarding it. The arched door was tightly closed, and one could vaguely feel that it was filled with a murderous aura. After thinking for a while, Ji Dong walked to the door and knocked on it. After several knocks, there was some movement inside. The door opened, and a middle-aged man walked out. He looked up and down at Ji Dong and said with a sullen face, "What's the matter?" Ji Dong said, "This is the Bartender's Guild headquarters, right? I want to take the bartender qualification test." A trace of doubt flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes, and he said, "The headquarters is temporarily closed. It will not be open to the public for a while. You can leave." With that said, without waiting for Ji Dong to speak again, he had already closed the door with a bang. If he did not know that something had happened to the Bartenders Guild, Ji Dong would have directly set up a battle formation at the door to challenge them. But now that they were in trouble, it was not good to be too aggressive. His heart moved, and he had already thought of a way to directly intervene in the matter of the Bartenders Guild being ransacked. He was afraid that he would have to rely on his identity when he entered the city. Just as Ji Dong was about to leave and go to the Magician's Guild, suddenly his sharp hearing caught a noise coming from the Bartenders Guild headquarters. The door that had just been closed not long ago opened with a bang, and he heard an angry voice from inside. Get out of here. I don't have a son like you. From now on, you're not allowed to step into the Bartenders Guild headquarters. Kick him out. Whoever pleads for him, get out of the guild with him. Do you think I want to come back? You are too stubborn. If my mother and sister had not been kidnapped, I would not have come back. One day, I will replace your reputation as the god of wine." Amidst the chaotic footsteps, a man walked out of the Bartenders Guild angrily, and a few people followed behind him. "Du Ming, don't be impulsive. The president is angry. You shouldn't talk back to him." The man who came out first looked to be about 23 or 24 years old. He was tall and slender, about the same height as Ji Dong. Because of his anger, his handsome face was a little red, and he had short black hair. He looked very handsome. The people who followed him out were all middle-aged men with at least 6-star bartender badges. They were constantly trying to persuade him. "The others will be here soon. Tell him to get out of here." The angry voice from before was heard again. The people who followed him out waved at the young man helplessly, then returned to the Bartenders Guild headquarters and closed the door again. When he heard the voice coming from inside, Ji Dong stopped in his tracks. The young man walked out of the Bartenders Guild headquarters with big strides and happened to meet him face to face. Seeing Ji Dong, the young man was stunned for a moment. The angry expression on his face faded a little, and he asked, "Who are you?" Ji Dong smiled and said, "Hello, I am here to take the bartender exam, but something seems to have happened in the guild. They said that the exam has been suspended. What are you doing here?" The young man said angrily, "Why are you taking the exam to be a bartender? The Bartenders Guild has changed a long time ago. If you're not a triple champion magician, you're not allowed to take the exam to be a 3-star bartender or above. What kind of logic is this? Who said that a bartender must be a magician? Is it really that good to mix drinks with the help of magic? This goes against the purity of being a bartender. The guild is filled with a bunch of stubborn old fools. One day, I will use my pure bartending skills to defeat these people who only know how to mix drinks with magic. I advise you not to take the exam. It's meaningless. If you're a magician, then go to the Magician's Guild. If you're not a magician, then you don't need to take the exam. It's meaningless." Listening to the young man's words, Ji Dong couldn't help but feel a little surprised. After coming to this world, he had seen some bartenders, but this was the first time he heard someone say that he wanted to mix drinks with pure technique and not with the help of magic. From the previous conversation, this young man seemed to have an unusual relationship with the president of the Bartenders Guild, the god of wine, Du Sikon. This young man seemed a little interesting. You are right. Technique is the foundation of bartending, and it is also the most important part of bartending ability. However, everything has two sides. If one day you can use pure technique to defeat them, and under special circumstances, you can add magic to mix drinks, perhaps the effect will be better. Different cocktails have different requirements. Some cannot be achieved with the help of magic, and some cannot be achieved with pure technique. No method is absolute. Only by combining them can one's bartending skills reach a deeper level. Perhaps these people in the Bartenders Guild are also working towards this direction. After hearing Ji Dong's words, the indignation on the young man's face gradually disappeared. He said in surprise, "It sounds like you have a deep understanding of bartending. Anyway, you can't take the exam. You're the first person who agreed with me. Let's go. I will treat you to tea. Let's talk." Ji Dong smiled and nodded. This young man must know more than the 4-crown magician at the city gate. It seemed that he didn't need to go to the Magician Guild for the time being. My name is Du Ming. May I know your name? Ji Dong. Du Ming looked up and down at Ji Dong and said, the surname Ji is the surname of the Middle-earth Empire. Are you from the Middle-earth Empire? Ji Dong shook his head and said, you can say that, but it is not completely correct. I am from the Southern Fire Empire. However, my father is indeed from the Middle-earth Empire. Du Ming said, let's find a place to sit down and talk. These days, I'm really depressed to death. He was obviously very familiar with Tianshui City. He brought Ji Dong to an elegant tea house. They went straight up to the second floor and found a seat by the window. Brother, you don't seem to be older than me, right? Hioheim asked after Du Ming ordered a pot of tea. Ji Dong said, I'm 20 this year. What about you? Du Ming said, I am 25, but I am 5 years older than you. You're only 20 years old, yet you have the courage to come to the Bartenders Guild to take the bartending test. Did you learn it yourself, or what did you learn it yourself? Ji Dong smiled and said, you can say that I learned it myself. Whether it was his previous life or this life, all his bartending skills were learned by himself. Du Ming laughed and said, if you really want to become a bartender, I can give you some pointers in the future. In Tianshui City, I know a lot of people. As long as you have some skills, I can recommend you to work in some high-class bars. Ji Dong laughed and said, that's good. I will have to ask you to give me some pointers in the future. If the Flaming Bar was here, it would definitely laugh out loud. This young man, named Du Ming, actually wanted to give pointers to Ji Dong. Even if it was Du Sikong, he definitely didn't have this ability. However, Ji Dong could see that this young man named Du Ming was forthright and straightforward. Coupled with his thoughts on bartending, Ji Dong had a good impression of him. At the same time, Ji Dong also noticed Du Ming's hands. His palms were white and slender. Clearly, he took great care of them, especially his fingers and wrists. They were extremely flexible. They were indeed the best pair of hands for bartending. Clearly, he had put in a lot of effort into it. Du Ming said, the Bartenders Guild has branches in some big cities. Why did you come all the way from the Southern Fire Empire to the North Water Empire? It's not a short journey, and you don't look like an ordinary person. You must be a magician, right? Although Ji Dong's appearance wasn't very handsome, his temperament wasn't something an ordinary person could compare to. Although Du Ming was in a bad mood, he could still see it. Ji Dong said, I am a fire magician. What about you? Rin water? Du Ming said, of course. The magicians of the North Water Empire are mainly water magicians. I'm not a sissy, so of course I'm a Rin water magician. Just now, I heard you say that in some situations, you can do things that magic bartending can't do. What kind of situations is that? Looking at the burning light in Du Ming's eyes, Ji Dong was slightly stunned. It was as if he saw himself in his past life in this young man. Wasn't he like this in his past life when he was in his 20s? He was so passionate about bartending. The Bartenders Guild had just gone through such a big incident, but Du Ming was willing to put it aside for the time being and ask him about bartending first. This kind of persistence couldn't help but make Ji Dong like him even more. A good bartender must first have a deep understanding of all kinds of alcohol. The same kind of alcohol, depending on the place of origin and the degree of alcohol, will have a myriad of changes in taste. When mixing cocktails, different ingredients can be used to make different effects. What magic can do is to increase the characteristics of magic in cocktails, or to use magic elements to affect the taste of cocktails, or to make cocktails more beautiful during mixing, or even to change the quality of cocktails through magic. However, if that's all, it can't really bring out the various changes of cocktail. It can only be made with a fixed pattern and a fixed cocktail. When it came to bartending, Ji Dong didn't need to think at all. He spoke with confidence and assurance. Let me give you a simple example. If I were to make a cocktail, then I could use the same ingredients and different techniques to make it taste more different. This is something that magic bartending can't do. Du Ming was shocked and said, what did you say? Using the same ingredients and using different techniques to make 100 different flavors? Brother, you can't brag like that. Du Ming was obviously doubtful of Ji Dong's words. Chapter 262. As soon as he heard Ji Dong say that he could make hundreds of different flavors from the same ingredients, Du Ming's gaze towards Ji Dong changed. His expression grew colder as he said, "Before I left the Bartenders Guild, I was a 6-star bartender. With just my skills, I could only make 3 or 5 different flavors from the same ingredients. Even the god of wine, Du Sikong, couldn't make so many different flavors from the same ingredients. Jidong, your lack of ability isn't a problem, but if you think too highly of yourself and think too highly of yourself, then there's no need for us to continue this conversation." Jidong smiled. "How do you know that the god of wine, Du Sikong, can't make hundreds of different flavors from the same ingredients?" Du Ming sneered. "Because he was the one who chased me out just now. He is my father, and I am his only son. Isn't that enough to prove my words?" Jidong had long since guessed his identity. Smiling, he said, "I don't want to defend myself. The truth is the best way to prove everything. Just because Du Sikong can't do it doesn't mean others can't. Why don't we give it a try? How about we make a bet?" Du Ming frowned. "A bet? I've never gambled, and I hate it. Gambling will only make people fall." Jidong said, "Don't worry, I'm not betting money with you. Let's do as I said just now. If I can make more than 100 different flavors using the same ingredients, then I win. If I can't do it, then you win. If you win, then I'll immediately take you as my teacher, and vice versa." Jidong's expression was calm as he spoke. Looking into his eyes, Du Ming could feel the pride and confidence in his bones. Could it be that he could really do it? No, that was impossible. How old was he? Even though his father was stubborn, as the god of wine, he couldn't possibly do what Du Ming said. Du Ming said, "All right, since that's what you want to bet on, then I'll bet with you. I don't lose anything anyway. However, if I win, I can't guarantee that I'll take you as my disciple. I don't like people who like to brag. If you win, then there's no doubt that you'll be my teacher in the art of bartending. What do you plan to start?" Jidong pointed at the table in front of him and said, "Let's do it here. You can choose whatever base wine and ingredients you want." "I can choose?" The way Du Ming looked at Jidong became even colder. It was as if he was questioning him. Even if you're arrogant, there should be a limit. With a flick of his wrist, a crystal flask appeared in Jidong's hand. He said, "I have most of the base wines on the market. I also have some ingredients. This tea house should also be able to provide some fruit juice ingredients. You can choose." At this moment, Jidong wasn't just trying to understand what had happened in the Bartenders Guild from Du Ming. After a simple conversation, he had a general understanding of this young man's dedication to bartending, as well as his own character. With the fire of the soul, Jidong was able to see through people very accurately. Du Ming didn't put on any pretense during their conversation, and he completely revealed his true nature. Du Ming slammed his hand on the table and said, "All right, let me see what you're capable of. We'll use the standard cocktail, the sunrise base wine and ingredients." Jidong nodded and said, "Please ask the waiter for lemon juice and pomegranate juice. I have tequila here." Du Ming called the waiter over and told him not to bring tea just yet. Instead, he wanted a glass of freshly squeezed lemon juice and a glass of freshly squeezed pomegranate juice. Of course, the waiter was more than happy to let them change drinks. Compared to tea, these two types of fruit juices that weren't in season were much more expensive. After a while, 2 glasses of freshly squeezed fruit juices were brought over. One was a pale yellow lemon juice, while the other was a ruby-like pomegranate juice. Jidong took out a bottle of ordinary tequila from his vermilion burr bracelet, as well as 2 standard cocktail glasses. He poured a little of the tequila into one of the glasses, and with a light flick of his fingers, he held the glass in his hand and handed it over to Du Ming. Du Ming naturally knew that Jidong wanted him to taste the tequila to see if there was anything unusual about it. Taking the glass, Du Ming only sniffed it for a moment before Hyoheim nodded, indicating that there was no problem. He was once a 6-star bartender. If he couldn't even smell a common base wine like tequila, then he didn't need to work in the industry anymore. Jidong didn't immediately start mixing the drink. Instead, he stretched out both his hands. With 2 whooshing sounds, 2 red flames appeared on each of his palms, enveloping his entire palms. A simple 3rd flame surrounded his palms, but Jidong's expression didn't change in the slightest. He cleaned his hands, unwilling to waste time washing them with water. Using yang flames to burn them was the same. Seeing the flames on Ji Dong's palms, and his eyes gradually focused, Du Ming's previously angry emotions gradually calmed down. He sat there, silently watching Ji Dong's actions. At this time of day, there weren't many people drinking tea in the tea house. There were only 2 or 3 tables on the second floor. Although the flames attracted attention, magicians weren't that rare. Those who could come here to drink tea were all wealthy nobles, so they didn't find it strange. They thought it was just a young man showing off, so it didn't cause any trouble. After the flames were extinguished, Ji Dong shook his hands. The temperature of his palms quickly dropped. Only then did he open the crystal flask and pour the base drink, tequila, into it. As the saying goes, one small clue can reveal the whole picture. Watching Ji Dong pour the drink, Du Ming's gaze instantly became more serious. 4 tenths of tequila, no more, no less. Most importantly, not a single drop leaked out. When Ji Dong put away the bottle of tequila, there was only 4 tenths left. Next was 5 tenths of lemon juice and 1 tenth of stone juice. That was all the ingredients for a standard cocktail, sunrise. After putting the cap back on the flask, Ji Dong said to Du Ming, "Do you need to check again?" Du Ming shook his head and said, "Let's begin." Ji Dong tilted his head slightly. He raised his right hand and pinched the cap of the flask. Just when Du Ming was wondering what Ji Dong was going to do, the flask suddenly flew into the air. Or rather, it was flung into the air by Ji Dong. The crystal flask spun rapidly in the air. It even made a humming sound. One could clearly see the base drink and the 2 ingredients fusing into one in that instant. The speed at which the flask spun was breathtaking. It looked like a golden red disc dancing in the air. Seeing this scene, Du Ming no longer looked down on Ji Dong. Just now, Ji Dong had only flicked his wrist to fling the flask into the air. It was done with the strength of his fingers and wrist. This wasn't a matter of strength, but rather precise control. Du Ming realized that this young man named Ji Dong didn't even raise his head to look at the flask. From start to finish, his expression was calm, as if everything was under his control. The flask spun rapidly as it fell from the sky. With a soft thud, it landed smoothly on the table. During this entire process, Ji Dong didn't use his hand to touch the flask. The flask was as stable as a nail. There wasn't even the slightest bit of movement. His control over his strength could be said to have reached the pinnacle of perfection. With a light flick of his fingers, the flask was opened. Ji Dong flicked his finger on the flask, and a wisp of golden red juice flew out, falling steadily into another clean high-wave glass. The amount of wine that flew out was very small. If one looked closely, they would see that it was exactly 1% of the wine in the flask. "Original sunrise, please." Ji Dong pushed the high-wave glass over. Du Ming was very sure that during the entire process, Ji Dong definitely didn't use any magic. He was a magician himself, so he could naturally feel that it was all due to the skill of his hands. Earlier, when he made the flask spin rapidly in the air, he was sure that he could do it. However, when he flicked the wine into the glass, he didn't even think about it. Still, not a single drop was spilled, and it was exactly 1%. Just these 2 points alone were enough to make Du Ming break out in a cold sweat. Just a moment ago, he had said that he wanted to teach Ji Dong how to mix drinks, but he couldn't even do such a simple thing. Could it be that Ji Dong's claim about the same ingredients having 100 different flavors was true? As he thought about it, Du Ming had already taken a small sip of the sunrise. The mellow taste, the fiery taste of the tequila, the perfect balance of the 2 juices, and the rich aroma all perfectly displayed the sunrise. The taste was even more mellow than the one he made himself. As a 6-star bartender, the son of the god of wine, he understood that the simpler a cocktail was, the more skillful it was. The same ingredients, but made by different people, could produce vastly different flavors. Although it was only a small mouthful, he was certain that only a handful of people in the Bartenders Guild could make such a thick sunrise, and that included his father, the god of wine, Du Sikong. Just as he took the first sip, Ji Dong had already covered the shaker again. Without another word, the shaker flew into the air again. Du Ming was still savoring the taste of the sunrise in his mouth when his eyes were completely attracted by the flying shaker. It was still spinning, but this time the rotation was completely different from before. Ji Dong turned the shaker upside down. The lid was on his palm, and as it spun rapidly, it formed a conical shape. Amidst the dazzling scene, the shaker stopped once again. He flicked the bottle lightly, and once again, a sliver of wine appeared. Please. Du Ming picked up his glass once again. This time, his expression couldn't help but become even more interesting. The mellow taste from before had disappeared, and what entered his mouth was actually a thick, sweet aroma. With his sensitive taste buds, he could naturally taste that it was a mixture of two different fruit juices. But why isn't there even a hint of tequila? Cocktails didn't necessarily have to be alcohol. There was a unique type of cocktails, and that was non-alcoholic cocktails. They were made with various juices and ingredients. Therefore, Du Ming couldn't say that the second sip that Ji Dong gave him was not a cocktail. Before he could think about how Ji Dong did it, the shaker flew into the air for the third time. Please, 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 please. Every time the shaker flew into the air and dropped down, Du Ming would reflexively pick up the glass and drink it. Just as Ji Dong had said, these three same ingredients were mixed in thousands of ways. In the end, Du Ming vaguely understood Ji Dong's train of thought. During the mixing process, he combined the three ingredients in different proportions. This way, the resulting taste would naturally be different. But what kind of exquisite technique was required to achieve this? After all the wine was in this shaker. To separate the excess, to create a new combination, and to create a new taste, there couldn't be a single mistake. Moreover, no matter how Ji Dong combined the three ingredients, every sip of the cocktail that Du Ming drank was mellow and sweet. He couldn't help but be intoxicated. This was supposed to be the amount of a cocktail, and he drank a total of more than 100 sips. However, this one glass of cocktail was enough to make him drunk. It wasn't just his body that was drunk, it was his heart that was drunk. Ji Dong's mixing technique was sometimes simple, sometimes complicated. Every time he waved the shaker, it was full of mystery. Every time he waved the shaker, he was deeply immersed in a wonderful feeling of enjoyment. The customers at the next few tables also focused their attention on the shaker. Each of them seemed to be frozen in place, unable to speak. They never thought that a bartender could be so amazing. The dazzling light emitted from the shaker even made them hallucinate. At this moment, Ji Dong was completely immersed in the joy of mixing drinks. It had been a long time since he had mixed drinks to his heart's content like this. He didn't use any of his magic. He was mixing drinks purely based on his skills. When he mixed drinks for the flaming bar, he would pour all of his emotions into the glass of wine. He would use the most brilliant techniques to make a top-notch wine, so he wouldn't be as carefree as he was now. This mixing technique was the absolute foundation of Ji Dong's bartending skills. It was like a mathematician reciting a calculus, calm and relaxed, yet full of freedom. He didn't need to think at all, nor did he need to pay attention to anything. He just mixed drinks based on his feelings. As Ji Dong's speed increased, Du Ming didn't even have time to hold his glass. Every time Ji Dong said the word, please, that strand of wine would be directly shot into his mouth. Finally, the final moment arrived. Ji Dong stood up abruptly. The chair behind him bounced off his leg muscles, and he took a step back. At this moment, the entire tea house seemed to light up. No one could see Ji Dong's arm clearly anymore. In an instant, 9 crystalline silver halos with a faint red glow bloomed in the air. Chapter 263. 9 balls of crystalline silver light, wrapped in a faint red glow, blossomed in the air, appearing around Ji Dong's body. It was the top-notch mixing technique. 9 suns illuminate the heavens. Following that, the 9 suns instantly merged into one, turning into a pearl the size of palm. Ji Dong's entire body seemed to disappear at that moment. The low hum was like the roar of a dragon, and one could vaguely see the shadows of dragons dancing and galloping around the pearl. However, they were not dragons of this world, but Huaxia's divine dragons, similar to the sacred fire dragon of Dian. The pinnacle of mixing, 9 dragons playing with a pearl. This was a mixing technique that was even more difficult than the descent of the 9 heavens fairies. Before today, Jidong had only researched this technique in theory. Taking advantage of the excitement of mixing the 100 flavors of wine, he subconsciously displayed it. He did not expect to succeed in one go. The image was not very large, but one could clearly see the 9 small silver dragons moving around the pearl in the center. With a soft ding, Jidong's expression changed slightly. The light abruptly converged, and the 9 dragons entered the pearl. A faint golden-red wisp floated out. That was almost gaseous liquor, and as it entered Du Ming's mouth, it instantly vaporized. The fragrant smell of alcohol seeped into every part of his body, and then evaporated from his pores, filling his entire body with a thick fragrance of alcohol. Jidong's hand also stopped, and a mixer in his hand disappeared. With a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds, fragments fell to the ground. The mixer had actually shattered during his rapid mixing. Jidong's face revealed a hint of unwillingness. He clearly felt that at that moment, he had already adjusted his condition to its peak, but in the end he still failed. Of course, only he himself understood this failure. The others present had long been subdued by his superb skills. So who could see the problem with the 9 dragons playing Pearl in the end? It seemed that his skills were still slightly flawed, or perhaps the original method he had thought of was wrong. What exactly had gone wrong? Was it the mixer? Did he have to change it to a sturdy mixer? No, it shouldn't be like this. Vaguely, Jidong had thought of something, but he couldn't be sure at the moment. He kept replaying the entire process of mixing drinks in his mind, trying to find the root of the problem. At that moment, a sudden thump jolted Jidong out of his reverie. When he looked up, he saw Du Ming kneeling in front of him. This son of the god of wine's eyes were filled with emotion, and his eyes were misty. His entire body was trembling from the violent fluctuations of his emotions. The disciple Du Ming pays respect to teacher. Bang, bang, bang. A series of kowtows shook the entire tea house. Du Ming respectfully performed 3 kowtows and 9 kowtows to Jidong. Although Jidong's final mixing technique of the 9 dragons playing with pearls had failed, the 100 flavors of the same wine had not failed. Tasting it 100 times and tasting 100 times was a huge shock even for an ordinary person, not to mention Du Ming, who was born into a bartending family. As the saying goes, the layman enjoys the show, while the expert appreciates the artistry. As a 6-star bartender himself, Du Ming instantly understood how difficult it was for Jidong to do what he did. Even his own father couldn't do it perfectly without the help of magic. Wasn't this the realm he had always been pursuing? To reach the pinnacle of bartending with pure skill. At that moment, he didn't have the time to think about how Jidong could have such amazing bartending skills at such a young age. Just like what Jidong had said before, the truth was enough to prove everything. It was enough to prove his strength. Du Ming wouldn't hesitate to become Du Ming's disciple. Jidong reached out and helped Du Ming to his feet. As someone who had lived 2 lives, it wasn't a big deal for him to accept a disciple like Du Ming. Du Ming's philosophy was the same as his, and Du Ming was talented in bartending. Of course, subconsciously, Jidong also wanted to compete with the god of wine, Du Sikong. But now wasn't the time. He had to wait until the Bartender Guild had dealt with the incident. Teacher, how did you do it? This is too miraculous. Even if I thought about it, I would never have dared to imagine that a bartender could do something like this. Jidong smiled and said, remember, the higher your heart, the wider the world is. Practice can verify theories, but how to create theories depends on your own thinking. If you're limited to a narrow range, then your theories will always be limited. You're like a frog at the bottom of a well, only able to see the sky. If you want to become an outstanding bartender, you must first be able to endure hardship. Then you must have a good understanding of the world. When I teach you in the future, I won't teach you how to make every type of cocktail. I will only teach you techniques and concepts. As for how much you can master them, that will depend on your own ability. The reason I accepted you as my disciple is because you share the same philosophy as me. Skill is the foundation of bartending, not magic. However, recently my thinking has changed. If I can incorporate magic into bartending at the same time, then I will be able to achieve a myriad of changes. Even 1,000 flavors is possible. Since you have accepted me as your teacher, I don't need to hide anything from you anymore. This time, I came to the Northwater Empire to find the Bartenders Guild headquarters because I wanted to compare notes with your father. I wanted to verify my ideas, and at the same time, I wanted to see how far your father has combined his bartending skills with his magic. Consider it an exchange and learning experience. Of course, I don't think your father's cocktail will be better than mine. Since Du Ming had become Du Sikong's disciple, Ji Dong felt that he had to make things clear. He had to make it clear to Du Ming what he wanted to do. After all, Du Ming was Du Sikong's son. If he were to challenge the Bartending Association in the future, and his disciple were to side with someone else, wouldn't that be the biggest joke in the world? Du Ming's eyes lit up when he heard Ji Dong's words. He clapped his hands together and said, "That's great, teacher. My father has stood at the top for too long. That's why he's so stubborn. He always thinks he's right. If you can defeat him, especially with my suggestion, then that would be great. Teacher, when should we go? Why don't we go now? I'm really looking forward to a showdown between you and my father. It's been a long time since we've had such a grand event in the bartending world. When the time comes, we can invite people from other guilds or even the government to be our witnesses. With your skills, you can definitely compete with my father." Ji Dong said, "Let's go. Let's get out of here first." As he said that, he grabbed Du Sikong's shoulder and leaped out of the window. 2 gold coins landed firmly on the table. It wasn't that Ji Dong wanted to leave, but he had no choice. The customers who were in a daze just now had already woken up. They swarmed towards him as if they had seen a new continent. Ji Dong was afraid of trouble, so naturally, he wanted to leave. They landed steadily on the ground. Du Ming was pulled by Ji Dong. He felt like he was riding on a cloud. He clearly saw that his teacher wasn't walking very fast, but in the blink of an eye, they had already passed a few streets. "Du Ming, I will definitely have a showdown with your father, but not now. When I entered the city, I heard that something happened to your Bartenders Guild. Before this is resolved, I won't go to your father. Your father must be feeling uneasy because of this. If I challenge him now, even if I win, it'll be an unfair victory. Can you tell me what happened to your Bartenders Guild? In the capital of the Northwater Empire, robberies, murders, and kidnapping of family members actually happened. I really can't understand it." Du Ming was still immersed in the excitement of Ji Dong's magical bartending skills. When he heard Ji Dong's question, the excitement on his face immediately faded. He sighed and said, "Teacher, can I trust you?" Ji Dong was stunned for a moment and said, "Why do you say that?" Du Ming smiled bitterly. "What happened at the Bartenders Guild this time isn't strange at all. We can guess who did it. I went back this time to help my father, but things didn't go as I wished. I'm just like my father, a stubborn person. I didn't say a word, so I was chased out. Teacher, I became your disciple because of your miraculous bartending skills. But your appearance here was too much of a coincidence. Now that you've asked, I suddenly realized something. Could it be that you're one of them?" As he spoke, Du Ming looked at Ji Dong slowly backing away, increasing the distance between him and Ji Dong. Waves of cold mana continuously rose from his body. Black light flashed and surrounded his body. This was the mana of the 9th water element. Above his head, a white corona condensed, with 4 crowns and 3 stars. A level 46 mana appeared in front of Ji Dong. To reach level 46 at the age of 25, even in the Heavenly STEM Academy, this level was enough to enter the Yin-Yang school. Looking at Du Ming, Ji Dong slowly nodded and said, straightforward but not impulsive, "Du Ming, I admire you more and more." Du Ming's mood was obviously much colder than before. He said, "Teacher, you are only 20 years old, but why do you speak so maturely? Come back to the Bartenders Guild with me. I admire your bartending skills, but you must explain what happened today clearly." Ji Dong burst into laughter and said, "Make it clear? What do I have to say? I came all the way from the Central Plain City. Do you think I'm here to deal with your Bartenders Guild? Fine, although I don't think I should prove anything to you. But since you insist, I'll prove it to you." As he spoke, Ji Dong took a step forward. Almost in a flash, he was already in front of Du Ming. Du Ming was shocked, but his reaction speed was not slow. Raising both his hands, a dense amount of the ninth water element mana instantly condensed in front of him, forming 3 ice walls, blocking Ji Dong's advance. At the same time, cold air came from all directions. Ji Dong was surprised to find that in this not very wide area, a few more ice walls had appeared. In a short period of time, they had actually surrounded him. Ji Dong's hand lightly pressed on the ice wall in front of him. Under Du Ming's shocked gaze, the ice wall melted under a layer of faint black light. He didn't even have time to feel what the black light was before he was once again looking at Ji Dong without any obstruction. Explode! Du Ming shouted, his hands suddenly clenched in front of his body. With a loud bang, the ice wall surrounding Ji Dong's body shattered into countless pieces. A strong explosive force was released from Ji Dong's body. An interesting magic skill. The corner of Ji Dong's mouth revealed a faint smile. A rich golden light quietly appeared around his body. The explosive force of the ice walls was quite strong. This narrow space was completely filled with sharp ice shards. But how could these ice shards pass through the barrier of the extreme yang fire? Any ice that came into contact with the golden light disappeared. At the same time, the strong elemental suppression caused Du Ming to retreat a few steps. His back hit the wall. His face was pale. The pure yang aura of the extreme yang fire made it difficult for him to breathe. In this empty alley, all the water elements were swept away. Only the aura of the blazing sun remained. Du Ming's 4 crowns couldn't release even a little bit of it. The golden light receded, and the suppression on Du Ming's body faded away like a receding tide. The pressure on Du Ming's body had completely disappeared, and he had regained his freedom. However, even though the demonic power had only appeared for a brief moment, the shock it brought him was too great. All along, he had believed that among his peers, he was definitely the strongest of the strongest. He also believed that it wouldn't be long before he would be able to surpass his father. However, against this youth who was even younger than him, he had lost. Not only had he lost so thoroughly. Ji Dong calmly looked at him. Previously, he didn't even release the yin-yang crown. He had the extreme dual fire magic. Facing an opponent whose magic level was almost 20 levels lower than his, why would he need to release the yin-yang crown? Wouldn't that be a joke? I can understand that you don't believe me. After all, the Bartenders Guild is in a critical situation. Since that's the case, our relationship as master and disciple is over. Remember everything I said before. It'll be good for you. I don't need to defend myself. I can only tell you, if I was the enemy of the Bartenders Guild, do you think I would talk nonsense with you? With the difference in strength between us, let alone one, even if there were 10 of you, I could easily capture you. When the Bartenders Guild was in trouble, you weren't captured because you weren't in the guild at the time. Otherwise, as the only son of President Du Sikong, would the enemy let you go? That's all I have to say. Goodbye. After saying this, Ji Dong turned around and left without hesitation. His expression became even more indifferent. Chapter 264. From a rational perspective, he could understand Du Ming's vigilance. However, he was also immersed in the wonderful feeling of understanding the art of bartending, and he cherished Du Ming's talent even more. Suddenly being questioned by the disciple he had just accepted, and even asked to confront him with force, from an emotional point of view, Ji Dong could not accept it. Moreover, he was more emotional than rational at times. Otherwise, he would not have faced hundreds and thousands of enemies for the sake of the forest demons, not to mention the Tuki Legion. Therefore, he turned around and left very resolutely. He would still help solve the matter of the Bartenders Guild, but he was not prepared to learn anything from Du Ming anymore. Teacher, don't go. Du Ming rushed forward and blocked Ji Dong's path. Ji Dong said calmly, "Why? Do you still want me to go to the Bartenders Guild with you? I will go there, but not now. I will have a way to convince your father that I am here to help, and not an enemy." No, teacher, I was wrong. Du Ming's face turned red. Just like what Ji Dong had said, if he was an enemy, would he let him, the son of the god of wine, go? Moreover, Ji Dong's bartending skills were so exquisite and the power he had released was so terrifying. Although he did not understand how Ji-dong did it, as a four-crown magician, he clearly knew how powerful Ji-dong was. With his teacher's power, even if he charged into the bartender's guild, no one would be able to stop him. With absolute power, what need was there for schemes? Moreover, Du Ming noticed that when Ji-dong said that the fate between teacher and disciple was over, there was a hint of sadness and even pain in the depths of his eyes. It cannot be faked. Whether it was from intuition or reason, he decided to believe Ji-dong. With a plop, Du Ming knelt in front of Ji-dong again and said, "Teacher, I was too impulsive just now. Please give me a chance. My mother and sister were both taken away, and my heart is really messed up. I am a straightforward person, and if there is a question in my heart, I will definitely speak it out." Ji-dong said calmly, "Sometimes, in a person's life, there is only one chance. From a rational point of view, I completely understand you, but I am a casual person. Now, I no longer want to accept a disciple. Let me remind you, no matter the misunderstanding between you and your father, this is the time when he needs you the most. Go back to the Bartender's Guild. Soon, you will see me there again. Goodbye, Du Ming." As he spoke, Ji-dong's figure flashed, and before Du Ming could react, he had already walked past him. By the time Du Ming turned around, Ji-dong was already gone. Staring blankly at the empty alleyway, Du Ming felt as if something was missing from his heart. He muttered to himself, "Sometimes, in a person's life, there is only one chance. Could it be that I have really missed the opportunity of my life? No, I will definitely not miss it. Teacher, I will wait for you at the Bartender's Guild." After leaving the alleyway, Ji-dong was in a bad mood. He was not a very open-minded person, but he was very emotional. When Du Ming's gaze had turned cold and he had retreated step by step, he could not accept it anymore. At this time, suddenly, Ji-dong heard the voice of the flaming bar. "Ji-dong, come back to the hotel now." Hearing the voice of the flaming bar, Ji-dong immediately threw everything to the back of his mind. The first thing he thought of was that the flaming bar was in danger. "Flaming bar, what's wrong?" The flaming bar knew him very well. "I'm fine. Come back. Someone is looking for you." "Someone is looking for me?" Ji-dong was stunned for a moment and immediately sped up his footsteps towards the hotel. After thinking for a moment, he knew who was looking for him. There was no need to ask. It must be the people from the Magician Guild. Other than them, Ji-dong couldn't think of anyone else in Tianshui City who was related to him. It was obvious that the two magicians at the city gate had reported his arrival in Tianshui City to the higher-ups. This was also good. It saved him the trouble of going to the Magician Guild to find them. As it turned out, his guess was very correct. When he returned to the hotel, he found that there were a total of 3 people looking for him. All of them were elders in their 60s, 2 men and 1 woman. He didn't know any of them, but from the badges they wore, he could tell that the elder wearing a black robe was a 7-star magician, and the other 2 were 6-star. In the living room of the suite, there was only Ah Jin sitting on the side with a cold expression. The flaming bar seemed to be in the bedroom, so the 3 old men sitting on the other sofa looked a bit awkward, but they had no choice but to wait here. The law enforcement elder of the headquarters had come. How could they not come out and meet him? Seeing Ji-dong, the 3 magicians couldn't help but stare blankly. The middle-aged magician probed. "You are?" Ji-dong said. "Hello, I am Ji-dong. The 3 of you should be from the Magician Guild's Tianshui City branch, right? You are the law enforcement elder?" The 6-star magician couldn't help but involuntarily ask. This old woman, who was old enough to be Ji-dong's grandmother, had a look of disbelief in her eyes. Although the news from the headquarters said that Ji-dong was very young, but when they saw Ji-dong with their own eyes, the 3 old magicians were still shocked. Ji-dong took out his 8-star badge and the badge and handed them to the leading old man. The old man carefully looked at them, then quickly returned them to Ji-dong. Magician Guild's Tianshui City branch leader, Gu Chun, greets the law enforcement elder. "These 2 are my assistants." Ji-dong said, "You 3 don't need to be polite. Please sit." The 4 of them sat down. Although Ji-dong was too young for the 3 branch leaders to accept, the badge in his hands were genuine, so they had no choice but to believe him. However, their expressions weren't that respectful, just like the majority of people who saw Ji-dong for the first time. A young man in his 20s, No matter how talented he was, how strong could he be? Law enforcement elder, you didn't come to Tinshui City this time. Are you just passing by? Or are you here for business? Gu Chun politely asked. Jidong's eyes were sharp, so naturally, he could see that the branch leader didn't think much of him. So he said, Branch leader Gu Chun, even if you didn't come looking for me, I was going to look for you. Aside from being a magician, I'm also a bartender. This time, I came to Tinshui City for the Bartenders Union, but I just heard from the branch's magician that something happened to the Bartenders Union. Do you know what's going on? When Gu Chun heard that Jidong came for the Bartenders Union, his expression couldn't help but change. Law enforcement elder, something big happened to the Bartenders Union. If it's not absolutely necessary, it's better if you don't deal with them for now. The Bartenders Union is being dealt with by the Demonic Alliance. Demonic Alliance? What's that? Jidong asked suspiciously. Gu Chun frowned. He obviously didn't think that Jidong didn't even know about the Demonic Alliance. How could he know that Jidong had been cultivating since he was young and didn't have much contact with the Magician Union? Only the magicians themselves knew about the existence of the Demonic Alliance. Whether it was Jidong or Fury, they could be said to be from the Academy. They didn't have much contact with the Magician Union, nor did they have much experience in the world of magicians. Naturally, they didn't know what the Demonic Alliance was. The Demonic Alliance is the abbreviation of the Alliance of Magicians. The members of the Demon Alliance are all demon masters who use the power of demon masters to fulfill their selfish desires and harm society. Although the total number of demon masters in the Demon Alliance is far less than our guild, their core strength is very strong. The history of the Demon Alliance is even earlier than the Magic Skill Guild, almost at the same time as our Magic Master Guild. In the Demon Alliance, strength is everything, and the organizational structure is very strict. About 200 years ago, our Magic Master Guild and the Magic Skill Guild once launched a large encirclement against the Demon Alliance. That was a huge blow to them. At least 5 supreme rankers from both sides participated in the battle. However, that battle also caused our 2 guilds to suffer heavy losses. Since then, the Demon Alliance has disappeared, and from the light to the dark, they no longer appear so brazenly on the continent. It was only in the recent decades that their activities started to become more frequent. According to our estimation, the Demon Alliance's main camp is in the Northwater Empire. Their activities in the Northwater Empire are also the most rampant, robbing caravans, killing demon masters, kidnapping nobles, raping, and looting. After the Bartenders Guild was in trouble, they immediately came to our Magic Master Guild and asked us to investigate. On the Bartenders Guild, we clearly left the black dragon mark of the Demon Alliance. Therefore, we can be sure that the Demon Alliance must have taken a fancy to something in the Bartenders Guild, and that's why they suddenly launched an attack to rob and kill. The Demon Alliance has a history of thousands of years. Although they have been encircled many times in history, they are still alive, and their actions are getting more and more secretive. It's extremely difficult to find their headquarters or main force. This time, it was Jidong's turn to be shocked. He didn't expect that there was such an alliance among the Demon Masters. Not all the Demon Masters were controlled by the Magic Master Guild and the nobles. Yes, when a person had extraordinary abilities, there would be people with weak willpower who used this extraordinary power on the pursuit of profit. Jidong asked, Branch Leader Lonely Day, since we found out that it was the Demon Alliance, how are we going to deal with it? Lonely Day sighed and shook his head. We've already sent the news to the headquarters, but I'm afraid the guild won't care about this. Jidong asked doubtfully, why not? Shouldn't our guild help the Bartenders Guild when the Demon Alliance appeared? Lonely Day said, Elder, it's not that we don't want to help, but it's because we're in a critical period right now. We have more than enough manpower to defend Tinshui City, but we don't have enough manpower to attack. Moreover, although the Bartenders Guild has asked us for help, they're timid and apprehensive. The Demon Alliance left them a letter after the raid, but Du Sikong refused to let us see the letter and refused to tell us the contents. We don't even know the whole story, so how can we help them? The battle of Saint and Evil will begin in half a year's time. Although the guild won't directly participate in the battle of Saint and Evil, but before every battle of Saint and Evil, The guild will have to make a lot of preparations and deploy a large number of elite magicians to the entrance of the Saint and Evil Passage, ready to support at any time. This is the rule left behind by the ancestors, and we're currently preparing for this matter. It's impossible for us to divert a large number of magicians for the Demon Alliance's matter. Moreover, even if we transfer a large number of magicians from the headquarters, there shouldn't be enough time. The headquarters also needs to deploy people from all over the place, and with a long journey, it's impossible to arrive without 2 to 3 months. The time that the Demon Alliance gave the Bartenders Guild will not exceed 10 days. They clearly saw this point before suddenly attacking. Although we're prepared now, they've already captured the women and children of the Bartenders Guild. Pure defense is useless. As the branch leader, I can't gamble with the lives of our guild's magicians just because of the Bartenders Guild. So that's how it is. Listening to Lonely Day's words, Jidong had a better understanding of the situation. For the sake of the battle of Saint and Evil, the Magicians Guild had put in so much effort behind the scenes. Since the Wine Master Guild didn't care, then he would handle it himself. He wanted to see just how strong the Demon Alliance was. Branch leader Lonely Day, how about this? I'll trouble you to introduce me to the Bartenders Guild. I'll handle the matter of their robbery. Lonely Day was taken aback. You want to handle this personally? Elder, this isn't too good. Although that was what he said, Gu Chun didn't think much of it. Newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. Although I don't know how you managed to obtain the honor of the law enforcement elder, but is the demonic alliance so easy to deal with? If it was like that, they would have been destroyed a few hundred years ago. There's nothing bad about it, Ji Dong said. I just want to understand the situation. Don't worry. If it's impossible, I won't force it. There's no time to lose. Let's go. The enforcement elder was a respected figure in the Magicians Guild, second only to the Magicians Guild's president. Lonely Day couldn't disobey Ji Dong's orders. With no other choice, he brought the 2 vice presidents and Ji Dong to the Bartenders Guild's headquarters. When they arrived at the Bartenders Guild's headquarters, the strange building's doors were still tightly shut. It was as if they were 1,000 miles away. Lonely Day knocked on the door. The Magicians Guild's Lonely Day is here to pay a visit. It wasn't long before the Bartenders Guild's doors were fully opened. A dozen or so people came out to greet them. President Lonely Day, I was just about to go find you. Chapter 265. At the entrance of the Bartender Guild headquarters, a dozen people came out to welcome Lonely Dawn. When the person in the lead saw Lonely Dawn, he immediately greeted him with a face full of joy. Jidong looked over and saw that the person in the lead was around 60 years old. He was tall and skinny. His face was like a silver basin, his nose was straight, and his mouth was square. He must have been a distinguished person when he was young. From his facial features, one could see some similarities to Du Ming, but at this time his eyes were bloodshot and his face was extremely ugly. President Du Sikong, we came uninvited. Please forgive us, Lonely Dawn said faintly. Although his words were polite, there was a bit of arrogance in his expression. Although he was only a branch president of the Magician Guild, after the Magician Guild and the Magic Skill Guild merged, it had become the only special class guild on the continent. Although the Bartenders Guild was also a first-class guild compared to the Magician Guild, it was too far away. Du Sikong hurriedly smiled and said, President Lonely Dawn, didn't I just say that I was going to look for you? You and the 2 vice presidents are important guests that we can't even invite. Quick, come in. Lonely Dawn moved to the side and made way for Hyoheim respectfully. He then said to Du Sikong, President Du Sikong, please call me Branch President Lonely Dawn. Let me introduce you to the Sky Water City Branch President of the Magician Guild. Lonely Dawn and the 2 vice presidents brought Ji Dong to the Bartender Guild. This is our Magician Guild's enforcement elder, Mr. Ji Dong. Enforcement elder? Hearing Lonely Dawn's introduction, Du Sikong was instantly shocked. There were many elders in the Magician Guild. Usually, they were the famous magicians of the older generation. However, there were very few enforcement elders. They were all people with real power in the Magician Guild. Their positions were second only to the president and were on equal footing with the vice presidents of the headquarters. When Du Sikong saw Ji Dong, his expression couldn't help but change. He then turned his head to look at Lonely Dawn, and his smile faded a lot. "President Lonely Dawn, you're not joking, right? This is your Magician Guild's enforcement elder? Although our Bartenders Guild is in trouble, we're still a first-class guild. Although I was apprehensive previously and neglected you, you shouldn't have toyed with me like this." It was no wonder that Du Sikong didn't believe him. If it wasn't for the news from the Magician Guild that pointed out Ji Dong's age, Lonely Dawn himself wouldn't believe his identity as the enforcement elder. Right at this moment, a figure walked out from the group of people that came with Du Sikong and arrived in front of Ji Dong in just a few steps. He knelt on the ground and said, "Disciple Du Ming greets Master." Seeing Du Ming kneeling in front of him, Ji Dong, "Du Ming, please." The sliver of unhappiness in his heart had already dissipated. After hearing Lonely Dawn talk about the Magician Alliance, he sympathized with the Bartenders Guild even more. Du Ming's previous vigilance was naturally completely understood. Du Ming raised his head to look at Hyoheim. Seeing that Ji Dong didn't have any intention to reject him, he was instantly overjoyed. He hurriedly stood behind Ji Dong. When he returned to the Bartenders Guild previously, he was almost chased out again. He tried his best to control his temper and apologize to his father before he was allowed to stay. However, he didn't expect that Ji Dong would appear in front of him again as the enforcement elder of the Magician Guild. This time, he didn't doubt it at all. Ji Dong's tyrannical strength in front of him had left too deep an impression on him. Du Sikong and Lonely Star couldn't help but stare blankly at the scene. Lonely Star knew Du Ming, and he also knew that Du Ming and Du Sikong weren't on good terms. No wonder the law enforcement elder came to help the Bartender Guild. It turned out that he had such a relationship with Du Sikong's son. But was this law enforcement elder older than Du Ming? Du Sikong looked at Hyoheim suspiciously, then looked at Lonely Dawn. "Is this really the enforcement elder of your guild?" Lonely Dawn's face darkened. "Du Sikong, why are you being so disrespectful to my guild's elder?" "Branch leader Lonely Dawn, forget it." Ji Dong extended his hand towards Du Sikong. "Greetings, President Du Sikong. I've long heard of the god of wine's great name. It's a pleasure to meet you. Shall we go inside and talk?" Du Sikong had spent the past few days in agony. He extended his hand and shook Ji Dong's. Instantly, an extremely pure and boundless aura of life surged out from Ji Dong's palm. Du Sikong's entire body trembled. Just as he was about to resist, he discovered that this enormous aura of life had instantly spread throughout his entire body. His weariness immediately relaxed, and his spirits rose. The way he looked at Ji Dong also changed. When he looked at his son again, he saw Du Ming standing behind Ji Dong, nodding slightly at him. His eyes were filled with excitement. "Elder Ji Dong, I apologize for my impoliteness just now. Please." With his status as the enforcement elder, Ji Dong became the center of attention. Under the crowd's escort, he finally entered the main entrance of the Bartenders Guild for the first time. After entering the main entrance, Ji Dong couldn't help but frown slightly. Inside the unique building of the Bartenders Guild, everything was a mess. The ground was littered with broken items, and there was a thick smell of mixed alcohol in the air. Obviously, this was the smell of many different types of alcohol spilled on the ground. There were dozens of bartenders in the main hall. Du Sikong led the crowd through the main hall and into a large conference room on the second floor. He dismissed the attendants and personally closed the door. Inside the conference room, only he, Ji Dong, and Du Ming were left. Du Sikong invited Ji Dong to take a seat at the head of the table. He sighed and said, "Our Bartenders Guild usually treats our guests with good wine, but now it's really. Please forgive us, Elder and Vice Presidents." Ji Dong said, "There's no need to be so courteous. Not long ago, I took Du Ming as my disciple. I suddenly heard that your guild was in trouble, so I came to see if there's anything I can help with. I heard from Vice President Gu Chan that it was the people from the Demon Alliance who came to cause trouble." Du Sikong sighed and said, "First of all, I would like to apologize to Vice President Gu Chan. The last time you came, my guild was in trouble, and my mind was in a mess. Furthermore, this matter concerns the biggest secret of our Bartenders Guild, so I did not explain everything clearly to you. These 2 days, I've already thought it through. Only the Magic Alliance can help our Bartenders Guild to get through this crisis. Here, I would like to ask Elder Jidong and the 3 vice presidents to help us. If not, the Bartenders Guild might be destroyed. If not for the battle of sane and evil that is about to begin, maybe I could still ask Vice President Fury of the Central Plain City to come back and help us. But at this time, he is preparing for the battle of saint and evil. I really do not want to disturb him. After all, this concerns the safety of the continent. Jidong smiled and said, "You are talking about the Thunder Emperor Fury, right? Although he cannot come, there shouldn't be any difference if I come. Fury is my senior." Du Kong was stunned and said, "Elder, you are the junior of Fury of the Vice President? That means you are also from the Heavenly STEM Academy." Jidong nodded and said, "You can say that. Teacher only has 2 disciples, me and senior brother. If it's possible, President, could you please tell us the ins and outs of the matter so that we could decide how to help your association?" Hearing that Jidong was Fury's junior, Du Kong's expression became much better. He was very clear about the people behind Fury. Although the young man in front of him could not be compared to Fury in terms of strength, since he was Fury's junior, he was naturally the disciple of the 2 supreme martial artists. In the past 3 days, this was the only good news he had received. At this time, I have nothing to hide. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. This time, the demonic alliance targeted our Bartenders Guild because of a bottle of wine stored in the guild. A bottle of wine? Hearing Du Kong's answer, Jidong's eyes immediately lit up. The demonic alliance mobilized so many people for a bottle of wine, and it was also the treasured collection of the Bartenders Guild. One could imagine how precious this bottle of wine was. Without a doubt, it must be one of the 10 famous wines on the famous wines record. Du Kong continued. The first president of the Bartenders Guild once wrote a book called The Famous Wines Record. In this book, the 10 famous wines of our world are recorded. Among the 10 famous wines, there is only one in our guild collection. It is ranked 3rd among the 10 famous wines, and it is called Vassi wine. The brewing method of this Vassi wine has long been lost. As far as I know, there are only 2 bottles in our guild. It is brewed from thousands of rare marine plants in the sea through a unique method. After 10 years of storage, it is then stored in a bottle made of deep-sea dragon jade and soaked in the sea for at least 100 years before it becomes wine. Vassi wine. Hearing these 4 words, Jidong seemed to be able to feel the aura of the sea. Not to mention other things. Just the fact that this wine was ranked above the source of life was enough to prove how precious it was. Du Kong said, "The Vassi nectar isn't just a type of wine. It can be said to be a top-notch magic potion. If you drink a bottle and cultivate in the ocean, then you'll be able to absorb the water element in the ocean and reach the pinnacle of the water attribute. This is also the real reason why the demonic alliance is targeting us. Achieve the ultimate water attribute." As soon as this sentence came out, the 3 presidents of the Sky Water City branch of the Magician Guild stood up at the same time. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at Du Kong. Even their breathing became a little rushed. Ultimate water attribute, also known as the ultimate 9th water and 10th water. A bottle of wine could produce such an effect. This thing was absolutely priceless. Only Jidong could still sit there calmly. The source of life could bring the dead back to life. If this Vassi wine couldn't surpass it, then it would be strange for Jidong. Du Kong smiled bitterly and said, 3 presidents. Now you understand why I'm not willing to tell the truth." As he said this, he deliberately looked at Jidong. Frankly speaking, if it wasn't for Fury's junior brother, he would still be hesitating whether to say it or not. Let's not ask how Jidong obtained the status of the enforcement elder. With the identity of the disciple of the 2 supremes, these 3 presidents of the Sky Water City branch of the Magician Guild wouldn't dare to do anything even if they coveted it. Guchan waved his hand and let his 2 deputies sit down. Because of his previous loss of composure, he couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. But it was no wonder he was like this. After all, the 3 of them were water magicians. How could they not be shocked when they heard that this was a priceless treasure for water magicians? Guchan forced himself to calm down and said to Du Kong, "President Du, I understand why you hesitated last time. To any water element magician, the wine you mentioned has a fatal attraction. Looks like the demonic alliance didn't manage to get their hands on it after all. Du Sikong nodded. The bandits took advantage of the fact that I and a dozen other magicians weren't around to ambush us. They stole many of the guild's treasures, especially some of the precious wines stored in the cellar. Fortunately, the Vassi nectar was carefully kept, so they didn't get their hands on it. They left behind a letter saying that they'll give me 7 days to go to northern Mang Mountain alone and hand over the Vassi nectar. Otherwise, I'll have to collect the corpses of the guild members after 7 days. After weighing the pros and cons, I've come to the conclusion that only the Magicians Guild can help us. Elder G, Vice Presidents, you must help us. The Bartenders Guild is willing to pay a hefty sum for this. Ji Dong shook his head and said, let's not talk about the reward first. The Vassi wine can't be obtained by the Demonic Alliance. President Du, I'll help you with this matter personally. Gu Chun hurriedly said, Elder G, the branch is willing to follow you to fight against the Demonic Alliance. However, I'm afraid that our strength isn't enough. Ji Dong glanced at him and said, I have my own ways to find reinforcements. However, we have to plan this matter carefully. Since the other party only wants President Du to go alone, then we can be sure that the Demonic Alliance has people in Tianshui City monitoring the Bartenders Guild. Even a Magician Guild will have people monitoring the Demonic Alliance, because only the Magician Guild has the possibility to help the Bartenders Guild. Therefore, the people from both sides don't move. I'll think of a way to attack the main force. Hearing that Ji Dong agreed to help without hesitation, Du Sikong was instantly overjoyed. Everyone began to secretly discuss in the meeting room. 3 days later, outside Tianshui City. Northern Mang Mountain was located on the west side of Tianshui City. The mountain range wasn't too big, but it sheltered Tianshui City from the cold wind coming from the northwest, so the city wasn't too cold. At this moment, on the road to Northern Mang Mountain, Du Sikong was riding his own mount, a 7th-rank Frost Earth Dragon, hurrying on his way. 2 years ago, Du Sikong had just advanced to 7 crowns and was the one with the highest magic power in the entire Bartenders Guild. His Frost Earth Dragon was bought at a high price when he was a 6-crown magician. The Frost Earth Dragon was a close relative of the Frost Dragon. Its biggest advantage was that it could eventually advance to a 9th-rank magical beast. Other than being unable to fly, the Frost Earth Dragon and the Frost Earth Dragon were extremely similar in appearance, so its strength was naturally greatly reduced. If it wasn't for the fact that he was the president of the Bartenders Guild and had the title of God of Wine, it would be extremely difficult to obtain such a magical beast. Chapter 266. The president of the Bartenders Guild, the God of Wine Du Sikong, rode his Frost Earth Dragon towards the northern Mang Mountain. In terms of strength, the Frost Earth Dragon was at the same level as the Emerald Ground Lizard Dragon King. However, his rank 7 Frost Earth Dragon had yet to fully evolve into an adult. The Frost Earth Dragon flew on the ground. In the sky, Ji Dong rode the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon under the cover of the clouds. Even people with good eyesight could only see a white cloud floating in the sky. They would not be suspicious. Ajin also went with Ji Dong. This was the idea of the Flaming Bar. In order to let Ji Dong help the Bartenders Guild with peace of mind, the Flaming Bar temporarily returned to the core world. Ajin and Ji Dong's metal dual fire ultimate combination skill had basically formed. With her and Ji Dong's cooperation, even if they encountered a Supreme Master, they would still be able to resist. Du Sikong probably would not have thought that the reinforcement Ji Dong mentioned was only Ajin. One of the main reasons why he listened to Ji Dong's suggestion and plan was that he saw Ji Dong's Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. One could imagine how shocked the president of the Bartenders Guild was when his Frost Earth Dragon didn't even dare to breathe heavily in front of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon Maodai and Wulianya. In the distance, Ji Dong could already see the northern Mang Mountain in the distance. At this moment, on the back of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, other than him and Ajin, there were 2 little guys. They looked like 10 years old children with holy fire elemental body, and devil flame, elemental body. The demonic alliance, an organization that had been around for 1,000 years, was definitely not easy to deal with. Ji-dong had to be 120% vigilant. Although he did not have the demon yin-yang armor to protect him, he had already put on the solar and lunar dual radiance gloves. He was ready for a big battle. Not long after, Du Sikong rode his frost earth dragon into the northern Mang Mountain. Although the northern Mang Mountain wasn't very large and couldn't be compared to the Earth Spirit Mountain range, its terrain was very high. The main peak was 3,000 meters high and was the highest mountain in the vicinity of Skywater City. The air was obviously getting colder, which caused the mist around the sacred evolution fire dragon to thicken, making it easier to hide its body. Du Sikong had just arrived at the foot of the northern peak mountain when he was stopped by a few people. These people were all masked and dressed in black, emitting a harsh aura. When he saw Du Sikong, he didn't say anything to him and just led him up the mountain. Ever since Du Sikong left Skywater City, Ji-dong had been carefully observing the surrounding situation. The effect of the soul fire was fully displayed at this time, especially when he was scouting from the sky. As long as there was a little bit of mana fluctuation or even a little bit of life aura, it wouldn't be able to escape the detection of the soul fire. He discovered that after Du Sikong left the city, there were always people following him. These people were all at least 300 meters away from him. Along the way, there were at least dozens of hidden spots. When Du Sikong passed by, these people didn't immediately follow him. Instead, they quietly waited there, and then like a net, they looked around to see if anyone was following Du Sikong. The whole process was very easy. They weren't like the masked people Du Sikong saw at the foot of the northern peak mountain. They were all different. Some were disguised as passers-by, while others were hidden in the forest. If one only looked at them with their eyes and didn't release their mana, it would be impossible to detect them. As expected of an organization that had been established for 1,000 years, their movements were extremely strict. When Du Sikong arrived at the foot of the northern peak mountain and entered the mountain, these people slowly moved towards the northern Mang Mountain. At the foot of the mountain, the most easily observed places were almost everywhere. As long as someone appeared, they would definitely be discovered. However, how could they have imagined that the person who followed Du Sikong here was not on the ground, but in the clouds in the sky? Moreover, that person had seen their actions clearly. After entering the northern Mang Mountain, Ji-dong could no longer see Du Sikong with his eyes. He could only rely on his soul fire to sense Du Sikong's location. He gave Du Sikong a bottle of magic wine, not for Du Sikong to use, but because he had carved a continuation array on the bottle. The wine also contained his mana. With this thing on Du Sikong, Ji-dong's soul fire was like a radar and could clearly sense Du Sikong's exact location. The people leading Du Sikong forward made many turns in the mountain, and after a while, they arrived at the waist of the mountain. They climbed over a mountain in front of them and entered the range of the main peak. Sensing the situation in the main peak, Ji-dong couldn't help but be secretly surprised. Although there weren't many hidden guards here, he could clearly feel some relatively strong mana waves. There were magical beasts and humans, and there were at least 100 enemies here. Moreover, their strength was rather impressive. Perhaps they didn't have the tacit cooperation of the Annihilation Legion and the Diamond Legion, but their individual strength was much stronger than the warriors of the two great legions. As for the Golden Eagle Chamber of Commerce, they couldn't even compare. If he hadn't looked down from the sky, even Ji-dong wouldn't have been able to detect all of them. There were more than 30 magic masters with mounts, and there were no lack of rank 7 or 8 mounts. There were even 2 rank 9 magical beasts. It was no wonder that Lonely Dawn said that their branch was understaffed. Indeed, even if the Northwater Empire sent an army to encircle them, they wouldn't be able to eliminate these people in the complicated terrain of the northern Mang Mountain, let alone them. After entering the range of the main peak, Du Sikong continued to climb. After about an hour, the Ice Earth Dragon had already carried him to a platform halfway up the main peak. At this point, Ji-dong could see Du Sikong's figure again. However, he couldn't help but frown in the next moment, because there was a cave at the waist of the mountain, and Du Sikong had been led directly into the cave. There were at least a dozen watchtowers and hidden sentries around the cave. It was unrealistic to follow them in without being noticed. Jidong raised his hand and grabbed Ajin's hand. Ajin was sitting on the back of the sacred Yan fire dragon and was resting. Suddenly, her hand was grabbed by Jidong. She was shocked and opened her eyes suddenly. Just as she was about to get angry, she suddenly saw a magical scene. A picture appeared in her mind without warning. At this time, she couldn't see anything through the clouds, but at this moment, she could clearly see the situation around the waist of the main peak of Baimang Mountain through the picture in her mind. It seemed that there was a magical force leading her line of sight, and the watchtowers and hidden sentries appeared accurately in her mind. He looked at Hyoheim in surprise. He really didn't understand how Jidong did it. Jidong said in a deep voice, "The people of the demonic alliance should be in that cave. We have to follow them in, but the people outside are too annoying. We have to not let them alarm the people around us. We have to choose a route to sneak in and hide well. What do you think we should do?" Ajin thought for a moment, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She said, "Kill." Jidong looked at her in confusion and said, "Can we not alarm the people in the distance and in the cave?" Ajin said, "Yes, let me go down from the west side near the top of the mountain. You can come down after I clear the obstacles. Be careful." Jidong nodded. There was no time to lose, and he didn't have the time to think too much. Although he knew that his overall strength was stronger than Ajin's, it was clearly impossible for him to kill these people without making a sound. It was normal for the clouds to blow on the mountain. The sacred evolution fire dragon crashed towards the main peak with the clouds on its body. Just as it was about to crash into the side of the mountain, it suddenly turned upwards and flew higher, bringing the clouds with it. At that moment, Ajin's body landed on the mountain silently like a cat. His entire body seemed to have disappeared completely as he stuck close to the side of the mountain. If Jidong hadn't given her a bottle of demonic wine, even his soul fire wouldn't have been able to sense Ajin's life force. What a powerful concealment ability. Ajin seemed to have become one with her surroundings. Sitting on the sacred evolution fire dragon's back, Jidong didn't idle around. He sat down cross-legged and placed his hands on his knees. His eyes gradually turned white, as if there were two white flames dancing in them. His powerful spiritual power spread out in a fan shape along with the violent undulations of his soul fire. One of the most condensed spiritual intent was connected to Ajin. Ajin had just hidden herself when she immediately realized that the strange scene from before had appeared again. She didn't need to use her eyes to see. It was as if she was looking down from the sky. She could sense all the changes around her. No matter how cold her personality was, she couldn't help but admire Jidong now. With his eyes that were everywhere, hiding and killing people would be a piece of cake. Ajin moved. With the naked eye, one couldn't even see how she moved on a mountain wall. It had to be known that there were very few plants that could be used for cover at such a high altitude. If one wasn't careful, they would be discovered by the enemy. Through the connection with the soul fire, Jidong discovered that there were metal spikes that were about an inch long sticking out of Ajin's 10 fingers. There were also spikes on the tips of her feet. With these metal spikes, she could move freely on the mountain wall. She had started clearing from the periphery. Those who had been sent out as hidden sentries were naturally not high-level demon masters. They were only at the 3rd or 4th crown level. Jidong watched as Ajin silently snuck behind the outermost hidden sentries. There was still no trace of mana. A thin metal thread silently slithered along the ground towards the hidden sentries. The strange thing was that the metal thread didn't reflect any light at all. Even under the bright sunlight, it was difficult to discover its existence. The metal wire went all the way to the back of the hidden sentry and slowly lifted up, stealthily reaching the back of the hidden sentry's head. The tip of the metal wire began to gradually enlarge, gradually turning into a sharp blade that was 3 inches long and 1 inch wide. The hidden sentry, with the sharp blade so close to his back, actually did not feel it at all. All of this happened in the span of a few breaths. In the next moment, the condensed sharp blade stabbed down without hesitation. It didn't stab through the back of the head. Instead, it stabbed through the gap between the head and the cervical vertebrae. The moment he saw the metal blade, Ji Dong couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. The place Ajin had chosen to attack was where the central nervous system was. With this stab, the person wouldn't even be able to make a sound, let alone resist. They would lose all ability to move, but they wouldn't die immediately. Through the senses of the soul fire, Ji Dong clearly discovered that when the metal blade cut through the sentry's central nervous system, it silently stabbed up and stabbed into the brain. That was how the person's life ended. While Ji Dong was still thinking about Jin's invisible killing method, she had already arrived behind the next target. Human life was tenacious, but it was also fragile. In front of Jin, these magicians were like paper. Not to mention resisting, they didn't even know how they died. There was no sound. It was as if Jin had become invisible. She twisted and turned on the mountain wall. Every time she paused, there would definitely be a hidden sentry silently falling into darkness forever. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 hidden sentries had all fallen to the ground and left this world. Now, the only ones left were the 8 sentries guarding the entrance of the cave. Ajin didn't even make any adjustments. In the next moment, she had already started to move. This time, there were 8 metal threads that slithered along the ground at the same time. In her hands, there were 8 tree branches that were more than a meter long. She definitely didn't just find them now. She had prepared them when she was assassinating the sentries. She didn't waste any time at all. As she did this, she waved her hand in the air, indicating that Ji Dong could come down. The 8 sentries were still alive. When Ji Dong saw Jin's gesture, he couldn't help but be stunned. However, he still chose to believe in Jin. The sacred evolution fire dragon crashed into the wall again with clouds and mist. This time, it went directly towards the entrance of the cave. The thick clouds were blowing in the mountain, which seemed to be Jin's cover. Ji Dong clearly saw that the moment the clouds and mist approached the entrance of the cave, the 8 metal threads hiding under the sentry's feet suddenly burst out. 8 sharp blades cut into the 8 sentries' central nervous systems almost at the same time, and then pierced into their brains. And at this moment, Jin also moved. Her speed was so fast that even Ji Dong couldn't see her clearly. He only saw an afterimage flash past his eyes, and the 8 sentries were already frozen in place. Each of their bodies was supported by a tree branch, and none of them fell. Chapter 267. Help them stop the bleeding. Jin's voice rang out in Ji Dong's ears. Ji Dong's reaction wasn't slow either. In an instant, he kept the sacred evolution fire dragon back into his core of life. At the same time, his figure flickered, and he followed closely behind Jin. He brushed the backs of the 8 people's necks, and fired devilish power silently seeped in to block the blood vessels around their wounds. This way, there wouldn't be any blood flowing out. After they were done with this, the clouds dispersed. The 2 of them didn't need to communicate with each other. They had already entered the cave. The entrance of the cave was very big, and the passageway inside was also very wide. Otherwise, Du Sikong wouldn't have been able to enter on his Frost Earth Dragon. This process sounded complicated, but in reality, it was completed in a short 5 minutes. From afar, the 8 Ming gang members were still standing there. They just wouldn't occasionally move around the entrance of the cave. As long as the sentries in the distance didn't walk over, they wouldn't discover anything wrong with them. The Demonic Alliance's defense system was very tight, but the extreme combination of Ji Dong and Jin was even stronger. They still entered the cave. The cave was very dry. As soon as they entered, Ji Dong gave Jin a thumbs up and said, "You're so professional. You must have been an assassin in the past." It was very easy for him to kill those people. However, Jin had taken the lives of those devil masters without anyone noticing. She had even arranged for the 8 of them to stand still. This ability wasn't something that Ji Dong could do. Jin glanced at him. She didn't seem pleased at all. She said, "Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and find that person." Ji Dong knew Jin's temper very well. He wasn't angry even after being rebutted. He waved his hand and said, "Follow me." The 2 of them snuck forward. The defense outside the cave was tight, but it was much more relaxed inside. Perhaps it was because those people from the demonic alliance were watching Du Sikong enter together. With the powerful spiritual undulations released by Ji Dong's spiritual fire, he didn't even need to use his eyes to accurately grasp every hidden spot in the cave. Ajin was gradually getting used to Ji Dong's spiritual detection, and her coordination with it became better. With Ji Dong's help, her concealment and assassination techniques were unleashed to the maximum. The two of them did not stop at all. Wherever they passed, no one was left alive. Ajin even used her magic power to drill directly into the wall, causing the golden blade to drill out of the rock to kill the enemy. Without the strength of 6 crowns or above, it was impossible to sense the fluctuations of her magic power when she completely concealed her aura. How could a magician used as a sentry have the strength of a 6 crowns? The cave was very deep, as if it had been drilled directly into the belly of the mountain. The wide cave clearly had traces of being excavated by someone. On both sides of the cave, there were magic lamps powered by the crystal cores of low-level magical beasts, illuminating the cave very brightly. Along the way, Ajin killed another 10 or so people before she truly entered the inner part of the cave. Light shone brightly in the distance, and faint voices could be heard. Ajin Hyoheim pointed upwards and leapt up first. She silently stuck to the top of the tunnel and used the sharp claws formed by her magic power to stick closely to the top of the cave before she continued forward. Ji Dong also leapt into the air like Ajin. He didn't have the strength of Ajin's magic power, but he had shocking strength. He channeled his magic into his limbs and stuck closely to the top of the cave. With every step he took, his fingers and feet would directly imprint into the rock. Without a doubt, he used up more magic than Ajin, and his speed was slightly slower. However, it was enough for the current situation. Very soon, they arrived at the edge of the tunnel. When the two looked in, they couldn't help but reveal expressions of shock. At the end of the wide path was a huge cave in the belly of the mountain. There were all sorts of strange stalactites hanging from the top of the cave, and water droplets fell from them from time to time. Compared to the tunnel they had passed through before, this was clearly a naturally formed cave. The top of the cave was 40 to 50 meters tall, and there were strange rocks everywhere. Ji Dong already had a slight understanding of the origins of this place. Without a doubt, this cave was naturally formed, but the original entrance shouldn't have been that wide. The people of the Demon Alliance had dug a path to the entrance based on the original natural cave and widened the entrance, which was why it had its current scale. It was obviously difficult to imagine that they would build such a base in a place with a low temperature like the northern Mang Mountain. Furthermore, this was only a natural cave that was used as a temporary shelter. Even if they gave it up, there wouldn't be too much of a loss. At this moment, Du Sikong was still sitting on the back of his frost earth dragon. His expression was very cold. There were a dozen or so people standing in front of him. The person at the front was not masked. It was actually a young woman in her prime. She was dressed in black, and her long gray hair draped over her back. Strangely, her long gray hair actually gave off a sparkling luster, like gray crystal threads. It was extremely strange and unforgettable. Beside this gray-haired woman, there was an old man standing on the left and right. These two old men looked exactly the same. They were a pair of twins. They were both tall and had sinister faces. However, their auras were extremely grand. The powerful pressure made Du Sikong, who was sitting on the back of the Frost Earth Dragon, not dare to act rashly. Behind the 3 people at the front, there were at least 20 demon masters gathered there. This did not include the people standing in the various corners of the cave. Almost all of the powerful auras that Ji Dong had sensed in the air were gathered here. Du Sikong, quickly hand over the vast sea jade nectar, and we will let you and your family go. Although the Demon Alliance acts according to our mood and doesn't care about the hypocrisy of the outside world, we will definitely keep our word. Although the vast sea jade nectar is good, can it compare to the lives of your bartenders guild? The girl at the front of the Demon Alliance looked at Du Sikong coldly and said. Her voice was full of pressure. Ji-dong was surprised to find that the girl's voice contained a strong spiritual wave. Although it could not be compared to his soul fire, it could still intimidate people. Du Si-kong said in a deep voice, "The vast sea jade nectar is the biggest secret of our Bartenders Guild. Can you tell me how you know about the existence of the vast sea jade nectar?" The girl said indifferently, "There's no harm in telling you. Anyway, your Bartenders Guild is meaningless to me from now on. Don't you know what a traitor is? You may be tight-lipped, but it doesn't mean that your family will be tight-lipped. If you hand over the vast sea jade nectar and return alive, whoever you see disappear will naturally be the one who told me this secret. It's hard to guard against a thief in the family. I didn't expect it to be a thief in the family." Du Si-kong said fiercely, "All right, I'm willing to use the vast sea jade nectar to exchange for the people you kidnapped. However, you have to let me see them first before I can exchange with you." As he spoke, Du Si-kong flipped his wrist, and 2 wine bottles appeared in his hand. The 2 wine bottles were exactly the same, and their styles were strange and ancient. From the looks of it, they looked like 2 boats. The 2 boats were a deep blue color, and the carvings were extremely detailed. They were extremely precious works of art. As soon as Du Si-kong took them out, the temperature in the entire cave suddenly dropped. From their bodies, a strong cold air was emitted, and there was a faint halo of light circulating within. This was definitely a supreme treasure. Even for Ji-dong, this was the first time he had seen such a thing. Du Si-kong held the 2 strange wine bottles with a serious expression. He said, "Since you know about the existence of the vast sea jade nectar, you should naturally know that it must be stored in the deep sea dragon jade. The deep sea dragon jade is extremely cold and is the most precious treasure of the sea. Any ornament made from it will be extremely beneficial to the cultivation of water element demon masters. However, the deep sea dragon jade has a weakness, and that is, it is very brittle. Once there's a slight forceful collision, it will shatter, especially a bottle like the one in my hand. Although I'm definitely no match for you, I, Du Si-kong, am also a 7-crown demon master. I can't guarantee anything else, but before you defeat me, I'm confident that I can shatter these 2 bottles. Now that I'm here and the vast sea jade nectar is here, you can release the people from my guild. After they leave the mountain, my people will receive them outside the mountain. When I receive the signal, I will hand over the vast sea jade nectar to you. Otherwise, I'll take you down with me today. Even if my Bartenders Guild is completely destroyed, I won't let you have your way." Du Si-kong's words were resolute, and there was no room for negotiation. Ji-dong and Ajin, who were hiding on the roof of the tunnel, could not help but secretly nod. The gray-haired girl frowned slightly. She turned around and whispered to the twins beside her. Then, she turned to Du Si-kong and said, "All right, we'll do as you say. Someone bring all the people from the Bartenders Guild to me. Let President Du Si-kong watch them leave." Hearing the gray-haired girl's order, someone immediately walked into the depths of the cave. After a while, nearly 100 people had been brought out. Every one of them was handcuffed and shackled, and they looked exhausted. They only became excited when they saw Du Si-kong. President Si-kong, Dad, a beautiful middle-aged woman walked in front with a young girl. When she saw Du Si-kong, she immediately exclaimed. Du Si-kong was indeed the president of the Bartenders Guild. Seeing his wife and daughter, his expression did not change. He said, "You guys leave quickly. Don't worry, I'll be fine." The young girl immediately pounced over and said, "Dad, I'm not leaving. If I want to leave, we'll leave together." Unfortunately, she was stopped by a magician from the Demonic Alliance and could not get close. The gray-haired girl from the Demonic Alliance said, "President Du Si-kong, you saw it too. Your wife, daughter, and the family members of the Magician Alliance did not lose a single hair. We want the vast sea fine wine and are not interested in the old, young, women, and children. Our Demonic Alliance also has a principle. We will not kill the old, young, women, and children. Now, can we start the trade?" Du Si-kong nodded and said, "Okay, get someone to send them out of the mountain. When they reach the Northern Mang Mountain, there will naturally be people from our guild to receive them. After receiving them, my people will give your people a token. When they bring it back, it proves that they are safe. Then, I will give you the vast sea fine wine. The things that you and I want are all here. Is it enough as a hostage? The gray-haired girl smiled and said, Okay, President Du is a smart person. We won't waste time with you. We will do as you say. Fatty 6, bring a few people and send them out. Once you get the token, come back immediately. Yes, Alliance leader. A fat, ball-shaped magician jumped out and waved his hand to point at a few people. He pushed the women and children of the Bartenders Guild out. Du Sikong's wife pulled her daughter with tears streaming down her face. In the end, they still left. When the girl left, she looked at her father with eyes filled with despair. Ji Dong and Ah Jin, who were hiding on the wall, looked at each other at the same time. They knew very well that if these people from the Magician Guild walked into the tunnel and saw the situation outside, it would be troublesome. Ji Dong's expression was firm and ruthless. He gave Ah Jin a look, and both of them were ready to attack at the same time. As soon as the old, young, women, and children of the Bartenders Guild entered the tunnel, they would attack. They would first kill these people with lightning speed, and then seal the cave door to prevent the people from the demonic alliance from chasing after them. Anyway, the sentry outside had been cleared. Naturally, there would be a big battle next. Although it was different from the original plan, Ji Dong and Ah Jin were extremely confident in their own abilities. However, the gray-haired girl's next sentence made the two of them stop what they were about to do. Fatty 6, bring them to the back of the mountain. There might be some experts from the Bartenders Guild monitoring our northern Mang Mountain from the sky. We can't let them determine how many entrances and exits our temporary base has. Yes. After agreeing respectfully, Fatty 6 led a few magicians to escort the people from the Bartenders Guild and left in another direction. Ji Dong and Ah Jin looked at each other. What they had to do now was to continue waiting until the magician called Fatty 6 sent news that the hostages were safe. Without these hostages as a burden, what they had to do next was to retreat with Du Sikong and the vast sea fine wine. It would be much easier than taking action now. Before they came, they had already thought of a few plans. Ji Dong even included the intermediate ultimate skill scroll that he had on him. He was going to help the Bartenders Guild get through this crisis at all costs. Apart from his sense of justice, he was also a little selfish in helping the Bartenders Guild. It was impossible for him not to be interested in the vast sea fine wine that was ranked third on the list. However, he would not rob it by force like the Demonic Alliance. Instead, he would fight for it in a proper way. A bottle of Source of Life was not comparable to a bottle of vast sea fine wine. However, what if he added a priceless intermediate ultimate skill scroll in the exchange? To Ji Dong, no matter how powerful the magic scroll was, it could not be compared to the top-notch wine that he desired. To Ji Dong, the vast sea fine wine was not to be used as a mana potion. It was just a wine that was to be appreciated and tasted. As time passed, Ji Dong's mind gradually tensed up. The crucial moment was coming. Chapter 268. Du Sikong held the vast sea fine wine in both hands and watched the people from Demon Alliance cautiously. Once he realized that something was wrong, he would not let the people from Demon Alliance have their way even if he had to destroy the 2 bottles of wine in his hands. He and Ji Dong had the same opinion about the 2 bottles of wine. The vast sea fine wine was definitely not a magic potion. Otherwise, why didn't he or the previous presidents of the Bartenders Guild use the vast sea fine wine to evolve their magic power? For people who truly loved wine, the vast sea fine wine's function of evolving magic power could only be regarded as an additional effect. Therefore, it was wine, a truly good wine, and should not be wasted by people who did not know how to drink. Ji Dong was still a little nervous. After all, he and Ah Jin had killed so many sentries. Once they were discovered, the situation would change immediately. He was looking forward to the magic master called Fat 6 returning quickly and bringing back the token. This would prove that the people from a Bartenders Guild were safe. Then, he would have less to worry about in the upcoming battle. After an hour, Ji Dong's expression gradually relaxed. After such a long time, it was not a big deal even if they were discovered. According to the time, the people from the Bartenders Guild should have been sent out of the North Seal Mountain. Then, He gave Ah Jin a look and prepared to fight again. Ji Dong quietly went to Ah Jin's side and held one of her hands. Although Ah Jin knew that Ji Dong was going to perform a combination skill with her, her heart still skipped a beat when Ji Dong held her hand. Ah Jin's hand was very cold, just like her personality. However, Ji Dong was surprised to find that Ah Jin's cold hand was very soft. Every part of the flaming bar was perfect. Her slender fingers were also just right, but Ah Jin's hand was much softer than the flaming bar. It was so soft that it felt boneless. Did it really look like the hand that could kill instantly and take countless lives? Ji Dong found it hard to believe. Ah Jin glared at him. In addition to the coldness in his eyes, there was also some panic. At this moment, the magician called Fatty Six finally returned. In his hand was a bottle of ordinary whiskey. This was the token of the Bartenders Guild. Begin. Ji Dong's voice reached Ah Jin's ears. The two of them, who were both 6 crowns of ultimate magic, moved at almost the same time. The ultimate dual flames blended together, forming the most perfect tacit understanding, and instantly poured into Ah Jin's body. Ah Jin's other hand was already raised, and a bright golden crown of een condensed above his head, instantly illuminating the surroundings. The change in light immediately attracted the attention of the Demon Alliance members inside. The gray-clothed girl's expression changed as she shouted in a deep voice, "What's going on? Let's go and take a look." 4 or 5 magicians rushed towards the tunnel at almost the same time. Their speed was extremely fast. The people gathered here were all masters of the Demon Alliance, and their movements were very agile. Moreover, the 5 people who rushed over all had young attribute magic, each representing one of the 5 elements. With this sudden move, their magic was released, complementing each other. The magic of the 5 elements was like a large net that shrouded the direction of the tunnel entrance. This was 5 6 crowns demon masters, and, judging from their movements, it was not just a day or 2 of cooperation. Their movements were extremely coordinated, and they did not have the slightest bit of carelessness. At this moment, 5 rays of golden light shot out from the tunnel at the same time, shooting towards the 5 demon masters. The 5 golden arrows were filled with extremely sharp, destructive power. At the same time, the cold aura of extreme gold, filled with killing intent, and the violent and profound dual flames burst out from the tunnel almost at the same time. Although the magic of the 5 demon masters complemented each other and cooperated well, when the 3 tyrannical magic appeared at the same time, they also felt that their magic seemed to have solidified by half, and their strength was immediately reduced by half. It was the suppression of attributes. Even 8 crowns demon masters had to bear the pain of attribute suppression when facing Ji Dong and Ah Jin, let alone these 6 crowns demon masters in front of them. Seeing that the 5 golden arrows were already in front of them, the 5 demon masters were shocked, but they did not panic. They immediately took a step back, and their movements were uniform. Each of them punched out, not at the golden arrows that were attacking them, but the air in front of them. Green, red, yellow, white, and black. The 5 rays of light collided in an instant, forming a strong 5-colored light ball. This huge light ball immediately released extremely strong magic waves, and in an instant it began to spin. The originally calm magic elements in the air suddenly became crazy. Even the attribute suppression released by Ji Dong and Ah Jin was temporarily dispelled by the magic waves produced by the 5-colored light ball. The strong vibrations formed a huge light shield with the light ball as the center, and in an instant, it blocked the 5 6 crowns demon masters. Although the 5 golden arrows were fast, they were still blocked in the end. 5 roars sounded almost at the same time. The strong, penetrating power of the golden arrows caused their bodies to crazily break into the light shield. Seeing that the 5-colored light shield was about to collapse, the 5 Demon Alliance demon masters each punched out. This time, the 5-colored light shield began to spin violently. After spinning 3 times, a terrifying explosive force burst out from inside, and the 5 golden arrows, which were filled with penetrating power, were forcibly torn to pieces. However, at this moment, a terrifying change occurred. In the 5 loud sounds, the 5 golden arrows were indeed broken, but at the same time, they brought with them an extremely terrifying explosive force. In a crazy explosion, the 5-colored light shield was forcibly torn apart, turning into countless halos that scattered in all directions. The 5 young attribute demon masters screamed at the same time and were blown back by the terrifying explosive force. Countless golden-red spots of light burst out from the center of the explosion, bringing with them the light of death. In the golden-red light, the cries of the 5 demon masters stopped abruptly. Their bodies were instantly torn to pieces. That's right, they were torn to pieces. The whole process was over in just a few seconds. The faces of the girl in gray and the 2 old men behind her were filled with shock. However, they did not know that the ones who were even more shocked were Jidong and Ajin. Although they had killed 5 6-crown demon masters, their hearts were very heavy. They had originally thought that this battle would not be difficult, but now they realized that it was not. At this moment, a phrase appeared in their minds: 5 elements combination skill. That's right, what the 5 6-crown demon masters had just used was the 5 elements combination skill. It was not as simple as simply releasing magic to form a 5 elements force field. They could clearly control the magic that they released. Even in the Heavenly STEM Academy, this was a direction that they had been researching, but they had never been able to do it. However, the Demon Alliance had already done it. If it were not for the power of Jidong and Ah Jin's ultimate triple element combination skill, it would not have been possible to defeat the 5 demon masters in a short time. In their eyes, anyone of the 6-crown demon masters could be easily killed in a second. However, after the 5 of them completed the 5 elements combination skill, they were like a perfect whole. Even the ultimate magic would not be able to gain an advantage in the face of such a 5 elements combination skill. How could Jidong not be shocked that the Demon Alliance had used the 5 elements magic combination skill to such an extent? The one who reacted the fastest was the god of wine, Du Sikong. At the same time as the violent roar sounded, Du Sikong had already urged his frost earth dragon to retreat quickly towards the entrance of the tunnel. At the same time, he released his 7 sun crown. Water magic surged wildly and fused with the frost earth dragon beneath him. In a flash, Jidong had already entered the cave. He unfolded his body and released the Phoenix Dance Dragon snake transformation. His wings flapped lightly in the air, and he was already in the air. At the same time, he threw the 5 bottles of magic wine into the air and shouted at Du Sikong, "Retreat!" Although the cave was not small, it was not easy to use. Only outside could the strength of his flame dual swords and the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon be fully used. Moreover, with the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's flying ability, it would not be a problem to take the 3 of them away. The Frost Earth Dragon only needed to be stored in the storage space or sent back to the contract space by Du Sikong. Kill them. The voice of the gray-clothed girl was full of anger. Dozens of Demon Alliance powerhouses rushed forward at the same time, but what greeted them was a violent roar. Under Jidong's ingenious control, the 5 bottles of magical wine exploded in an instant. Countless brilliant red lights blossomed in the air, turning into a terrifying meteor shower of mana. When the red lights met the air, they immediately turned golden red. The blazing mana fluctuations caused the temperature of the entire cave to rise sharply, as if a magma hell had descended. These 5 bottles of demonic skill wine were infused with the same demonic skill, Dragon Scale Flash. Although this demonic skill did not belong to the 2 sovereigns, it was taught to Jidong by His Holiness Yin Yang Chao. 5 Dragon Scale Flashes were released at the same time. Putting aside the power, the area they covered was enough to cover every corner of the cave. Moreover, the Dragon Scale Flash exploded with extreme Yang fire magic. No magician would dare to block such extreme Yang magic with their bodies. For a moment, the entire cave was filled with all kinds of mana fluctuations. The Demon Alliance powerhouses released their own skills to resist the effects of the demonic skill wine. The Ice Earth Dragon took advantage of this opportunity to turn around and run. Its huge body was extremely agile, and it quickly ran out of the tunnel. Ji-dong's figure flashed and retreated to the entrance of the tunnel. His body floated in the middle of the wide entrance, as if he could hold the pass alone. A golden figure rose from behind Ji-dong. In a flash, she had already arrived in front of him. Ji-dong grabbed Ah-jin's shoulders with both hands. Ah-jin's slender thighs curled up and hooked onto Ji-dong's legs, floating in the air with him. At the same time, she raised her hands and made a mysterious gesture. The dazzling golden light turned into a huge ball of light and shone from the palms of her hands. The golden light emitted a completely cold aura, a cold aura full of killing intent. As the cold aura bloomed, a huge metal ball covered with spikes had already appeared in front of Ah-jin. Just as the Demon Alliance's magicians had just resolved the attack of Dragon Scale Flash, she had already pushed the huge metal ball out. Ji-dong clearly felt that this metal ball with a diameter of more than 1 meter covered with spikes was clearly released by Ah-jin with all her strength. He didn't dare to be negligent. His dual fire mana instantly fused under the command of the soul fire. He poured all his strength into Ah-jin's body and fused with her mana. The moment the metal ball was pushed out by Ah-jin, the entire cave suddenly lit up. In front of Ah-jin, a huge figure that was flickering like the black and white impermanence appeared. It was 5 meters tall. The huge figure lifted the metal ball and suddenly threw it out. Its huge body turned into countless golden air currents and instantly poured into it. This figure that looked like the black and white impermanence was the metal element totem, Tying. When the fire mana was strong enough, the mana attack would cause the air to distort because of the high temperature. However, when Ah-jin's metal ball was thrown out, the air was constantly being cut. The ear-piercing screams and explosions were extremely irritating to people's ears. "What is this?" Ji-dong asked subconsciously. "Metal storm." Ah-jin's answer was concise and powerful. At the same time, she had already crossed her hands and waved them out. The huge metal ball in the air suddenly exploded. Countless metal fragments and the spikes on the surface of the metal ball exploded wildly. The ear-piercing screams instantly increased by more than 10 times. The fire mana in the cave was replaced by metal mana in an instant. The cold metal element produced an extremely shocking feeling. This was a real metal storm. A Demon Alliance mage with a slightly slower reaction had just blocked the Dragon Scale Flash. Before he could gather his mana again, he had already been torn to pieces by the metal storm. Even the stalactites on the ceiling of the cave were cut crazily in this terrifying metal storm. However, this was just the beginning. Don't forget that there was still Ji-dong behind Ah-jin. After the ultimate metal element, it was the ultimate dual fire element. When the metal storm turned into a mixed metal and fire element storm. Even Ji-dong was stunned by the power of the 3 ultimate magic combination skills released by the two. In this narrow cave, the two's combination skills exerted the greatest effect. The Demonic Alliance's mages could be said to have nowhere to hide. No rocks could be used as cover, because they would also be blasted into powder. The metal storm released by Ah-jin was a sure kill skill, and the ultimate dual fire magic that Ji-dong injected into her was even more than when she released the sure kill skill. It was equivalent to a terrifying skill formed by the combination of 3 ultimate magic sure kill skills. The lethality produced was infinitely close to the level of a beginner sure kill skill. Chapter 269. After the raging metal storm was converted into the assistance of the dual fire, the entire cave had turned into a golden red sea. The terrifying magic power caused the originally very large cave to expand. That was because the rocks in the cave were being peeled off layer by layer and turned into powder. Under the explosion of this terrifying skill that was infinitely close to the primary super killing skill, the Demon Alliance's demon masters suffered a huge blow. In this cave, all the Demon Alliance's demon masters whose magic power had not reached level 60 were turned into ashes immediately, completely destroyed by the metal and fire combination storm. Almost in the blink of an eye, there were 40 to 50 people in the cave, and only about 20 people were left. Ji-dong and Ah-jin's attack was too sudden for the Demon Alliance's demon masters. First, The 5 golden arrows killed 5 6-crown demon masters. Then, Ji Dong threw out 5 bottles of demon skill wine without warning, forming the dragon scale flash formation, which made the Demon Alliance's demon masters tired to deal with it. Then, there was this terrifying triple attribute combination skill in front of them. Under the situation where Ji Dong and Jin did not consume too much of their own energy, it almost brought a destructive blow to the Demon Alliance's demon masters. However, the Demon Alliance's demon masters also showed their own tyrannical strength at this critical moment. Those demon masters whose strength exceeded 6 crown were in groups of 5, forming either Yin or Yang attribute 5-element combination skill to defend with all their strength. There were 5 groups in total, and they formed a plum blossom-like formation. It seemed that they could perish at any time in the metal and fire combination storm, but they were barely holding on as they kept retreating. Once one group was unable to hold on, the other groups of demon masters would quickly come forward to cover them. Although it was extremely difficult to hold on, the effect of the 5 elements combination skill was fully displayed. Ji Dong was sure that if it were not for the 5-element combination skill, except for the 2 strongest old men and the girl in gray who was protected behind them, everyone here would die. Without such strength, he would not have dared to enter the tiger's den alone with Jin. Retreat. Ji Dong gave a low shout and spread his wings. His hands that were pressing on Jin's shoulders were now around her waist. He spread his wings, and the Yin and Yang fish appeared behind him. The soaring formation of the 5 elements formation had already appeared on its own, although he had only comprehended 5 formations so far. With the completion of the Fire of Soul, the speed of the formation's release was much faster than before. The destruction of the combination storm of metal and fire was terrifying. When it was over, the entire cave was expanded by almost half. Those 6 crowns and 7 crowns Demon Alliance magicians had consumed at least 1/3 of their mana, or even more. If this combination magic skill was not an area attack, and they had so many people to resist it together, the outcome would have been even more terrifying. The girl in gray was so angry that her face had turned pale. Chase them. If I don't kill them, I'm not human. The Bartenders Guild, you're dead. Under the leadership of the 2 old twins, the Demon Alliance demon masters chased after them with all their might. At this time, Du Sikong was the first to run out of the cave. The Ice Earth Dragon unceremoniously knocked away the corpses supported by the branches. Du Sikong could clearly feel the huge magic power behind him. He could not help but pray for Ji Dong and Jin. From the beginning of his departure, he had been carrying out the plan. The people of the Bartenders Guild and the Tianshui City branch of the Demon Guild were only responsible for receiving the old, young, women, and children of the Bartenders Guild first, then receiving them. Therefore, if they wanted to get out of the northern Mang Mountain, they could only rely on their own strength. This was also the most crucial part of Ji Dong's entire plan, and he was even more confident in this part. Until the other side saw Ji Dong and Jin kill the 5-6 crown demon masters in an instant, Du Sikong finally understood why this young man could become the law enforcement elder of the Demon Guild. When he saw the 5 demon masters use the 5 elements combination skill, his heart turned cold. But even under such circumstances, they were still killed by Ji Dong and his companions. 5-6 crown demon masters used the 5 elements combination skill. Their strength was not inferior to an 8 crown demon master. Even if their response was a little hasty, their strength was definitely stronger than his. Under such circumstances, they still could not resist the attack of Ji Dong and his companions. One could imagine how strong these 2 young men were. When the Ice Earth Dragon rushed into the tunnel, Du Sikong clearly saw the Yin Yang crown on Ji Dong and Jin's heads. He also saw that the Yin Yang crown of the 2 was not the traditional black or white. Without much hesitation, Du Sikong directly jumped off the back of the Ice Earth Dragon. According to the previous plan, he immediately sent his mount back to the contract space. Although his Ice Earth Dragon was not weak, it could not fly. In all the plans, leaving through the sky was the only way out. In the northern Mang Mountain, no one knew how long the Demon Alliance had set up an ambush. Only in the sky could there be no ambush. A faint light flickered, and the magic in the air became more and more intense. A figure, like lightning, appeared beside Du Sikong in an instant. "It's us." Jidong's voice rang in Du Sikong's ears. Before he could see clearly, there was a loud dragon roar. Du Sikong only felt his body become light, and he was already flying straight into the sky. At the same time, there was a dense wave of magic behind them. When Du Sikong looked carefully, he found that he, Jidong, and Jin had already flown into the sky on the sacred evolution fire dragon. Behind them, a group of Demon Alliance's demon masters had already come out. The 20 demon masters, the twin elders, and the gray-clothed girl had actually released flying magical beasts and flew into the sky to chase in their direction. Jidong stood at the intersecting neck of the sacred evolution fire dragon. He turned around and could not help but frown slightly. Not to mention the fact that these Demon Alliance powerhouses actually had flying magical beasts. What surprised him the most was the strength of the gray-clothed girl. The black ink crown on top of the gray-clothed girl's head flickered. The brand on it represented her identity as an Earth Demon Master, which was the Earth element. What surprised Jidong the most was that she was actually a 7-crown Demon Master. That's right, 7 crowns. In terms of age, Jidong did not think that she was older than him. If she was the same age as him, she would have reached 7 crowns. This kind of cultivation speed was really too shocking. Jidong was a genius among geniuses, but this gray-clothed girl could actually surpass him? Moreover, from the way the people of the Demon Alliance spoke to her, he could tell that this gray-clothed girl was actually the leader of the Demon Alliance. This was really inconceivable. In fact, it seemed very reasonable for the Demon Alliance's demon masters to use flying magical beasts as their mounts. For many years, they had always been opposed to the righteous demon masters and had been encircled and annihilated countless times. They had too many painful lessons. After all, they were not orthodox, and the people they recruited were also deviant or evil demon masters. In order to escape the pursuit of the righteous demon masters, it was extremely necessary to have flying magical beasts. Only by having faster speed and being able to leave the battlefield at any time could they have the capital to protect their lives. The gray-clothed girl's mount was a big silver bird. It looked a little similar to the earth element totem divine beast Sky, but it was not Sky because it did not have feathers, only scales, brilliant silver scales. If one looked closely, one could see that there were even gray lines on these silver scales. Even such a flying magical beast actually released the earth chi. It was clearly a 9th rank magical beast. When its wings spread out, it was 10 meters wide. Its chi was filled with a dense feeling, as if it would stick to your body as long as you were touched by it. The twin old men beside the gray-clothed girl each had a diamond dragon as their mount. They were also 9th rank magical beasts that had not completely evolved. The other demon masters were all 6th or 7th rank magical beasts. After all, if one wanted to have the ability to fly, they would have to give up on strength. Compared to land magical beasts, flying magical beasts were much harder to catch, and powerful ones were even rarer. Most of them focused on the speed of flying. The Demon Alliance's demon masters chased after them in a semicircle. Just like before, they were in groups of 5, together with their own magical beasts. Their chi suddenly became a lot stronger than before, especially the 3 9th rank magical beasts at the front. They released extremely powerful chi and constantly roared. Even so, for Jidong and the other 2, they were already safe. The flying speed of the sacred evolution fire dragon was not inferior to these 9th rank magical beasts. Moreover, with the help of Jidong's soaring formation, if they wanted to leave, these Demon Alliance's demon masters would not be able to catch up. As long as they left the range of Northern Mang Mountain, the Demon Alliance's demon masters and the Bartenders Guild's demon masters would already be ready to receive them. It seemed that it was very easy for Jidong and the others to complete this plan, but in fact, it was completely based on the premise of Jidong and Jin's individual strength. Without their powerful attack, how could Du Sikong escape so easily? Moreover, The premise of the success of this plan was also based on the Demon Alliance's carelessness. In fact, the Demon Alliance's people could not be said to be careless. To be precise, it was because they trusted their own arrangements too much. On northern Mang Mountain, there were nearly 200 Demon Alliance's demon masters who could scout almost every corner of northern Mang Mountain. How could they think that someone could sneak in under such circumstances? Otherwise, the girl in gray would not have agreed so easily to do Seekong to release the old and young. The appearance of Ji Dong and Ah Jin was too sudden for the Demon Alliance. They did not give the Demon Alliance any chance to think at all. The battle between the two sides had already changed dramatically. When they chased after them, the outcome was already set. Ji Dong. Ah Jin suddenly called out to Hyoheim. Ji Dong turned to look at her. Ah Jin said indifferently, "Are we leaving just like that?" Ji Dong laughed and said, "Looks like we are thinking the same thing. We represent the Demon Alliance and the Bartenders Guild. We're the righteous side. Why are we leaving just like that? Actual combat is a shortcut to improving one's strength. I don't want to give up such a good opportunity. President Du Seekong, please do your best. Ah Jin, come, wait for them to catch up." As he spoke, Ji Dong's figure flashed, and he was already standing on the huge head of Mount Ai. Ah Jin also moved at the same time. She came to the head of the 5-grain liquor, and the two of them stood on the two heads of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon let out an excited roar. Under Du Celian's dumbfounded gaze, it suddenly turned around in midair and stopped in midair, waiting for the Demon Alliance to catch up. Are they crazy? At this moment, Du Seekong's first thought was that these two young people actually chose to fight against so many powerful people from the Demon Alliance instead of leaving. He could not understand this. However, in the next moment, he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Ji Dong waved his hands. The left was blue and the right was red. The huge blaze sword and flame sword were already in his hands. Golden light emanated from Ah Jin's hands. The eunuch maker had appeared on the battlefield for the first time. The appearance of the substandard god-tier weapons instantly caused their aura to soar. Their ultimate attribute magic was released without restraint. Vigorous dragon roars came from the mouths of Mount Ai and 5-grain liquor at the same time. On the huge body of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, black and white light shone brilliantly. In the entire sky, there was only black and white left. This was the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's Tai Chi demonic territory. Facing the powerful pressure of the Tai Chi demonic territory, the Diamond Dragon of the two old men from the Demon Alliance was the first to bear the brunt of it. The aura and speed of the Diamond Dragon's mounts were greatly reduced. The 20 people from the Demon Alliance who had caught up formed a formation in the sky and surrounded the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. They did not understand why the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon would stop. Looking at the man and woman standing on the head of the two-headed beast, every demon master had a grave expression in their eyes. 2 people. The other party only had 2 people. However, it was these 2 people who had caused the greatest loss to the Demon Alliance in the past 100 years. In the cave alone, they had lost more than 30 demon masters below the 6-crown rank. When they rushed out of the cave, they realized that the number of casualties in the open and hidden sentry posts had reached close to 60 people. That was 60 demon masters. Without a doubt, it was all done by the 2 young men in front of them. Even though their yin-yang crowns were only at the 6-crown rank, they possessed ultimate devil power. The girl in gray flew to the front on her silver bird. She pointed at Ji Dong and said, "Who are you? How dare you attack the Demon Alliance?" When Ji Dong and Ah Jingang appeared, the powerhouses of the Demon Alliance thought that they were from the Demon Alliance. However, they quickly dispelled that thought because there was no one in the Demon Alliance who possessed ultimate devil power, unless they were supreme being powerhouses. Ji Dong smiled indifferently. He looked at the gray-clothed girl with bright eyes and said, "We are here to uphold justice. You only need to know this." Chapter 270. Justice? What a joke. What is justice? The victors are always just. If our Devil Alliance controls the entire continent, who would dare to say that we aren't just? You've killed so many of our Devil Alliance's disciples. It's too late, even if you hand over the vast sea, fine jade nectar now. I'll tear you into 1,000 pieces. Not only you, but the Bartenders Guild will also be annihilated. Tell me your names. So what if you know my name? My name is Dong. If you want to take revenge in the future, you're welcome to find me anytime. However, it depends on whether you have the ability to do so. Dong said indifferently. The gray-clothed girl sneered and said, In the future? You won't have a future anymore. Today will be the day you die. We're the left and right protector elders. The two old twins said respectfully, We are here. The gray-clothed girl waved her hand and said, Kill them. Yes. The two old men answered at the same time. They urged their diamond dragons to move in front of the gray-clothed girl. The two of them had the same weapon. They both used a long-handled warhammer. This seemed to be the favorite weapon of Earth-type magicians. 8 crowns, 3 stars, level 86. The left and right protector elders' levels were exactly the same as their appearances. They pointed their 6-meter-long warhammers forward. In an instant, their auras had already merged with the diamond dragons beneath them. Intense yellow radiance instantly surged out, forming a devil domain. It forcefully held up the sky, occupied by the Tai Chi Devil Domain, forming a standoff. It wasn't that the Tai Chi Devil Domain was inferior to the Earth 5th Devil Domain. It was because the Devil Domain on Dong's side was only released by the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. Dong couldn't help it. On the other hand, there were 2 men and 2 dragons on the opposing side. They had a clear advantage in terms of magic power. The 2 old men shouted at the same time. In an instant, the yellow radiance in the sky surged towards the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. Dense magic waves were continuously released from the 2 diamond dragons and the left and right protector elders. It covered a large area, not giving the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon any space to dodge. Sensing the aura of the yellow magic power, Dong's expression changed. This yellow magic power wasn't an offensive skill, but it was more troublesome. This was because they were releasing a gravity skill unique to Earth elements. Everywhere the yellow radiance passed, the gravity would increase by at least 10 times. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's body and the blaze swords in Dong's hands were already extremely heavy. Once they were enveloped by the gravity skill, Dong and the other strength would be greatly reduced. Just as Dong was about to launch an attack to break the opponent's gravity skill, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon moved. Its huge body suddenly swung in the sky, and the black and white Tai Chi domain in the sky immediately changed. The black and white colors interchanged and rotated violently. The oppressive aura of the opponent's earth element exploded instantly. The tyrannical explosive force caused a series of distortions in the sky. The air fluctuated violently, and the surging yellow radiance was forcefully crushed into powder. Mao Tai and Wu Yangye roared at the same time. From top to bottom, every single scale on their bodies blossomed with resplendent light. They actually relied on their strength to forcibly break through the seemingly substantial gravitational pressure condensed by the 2 rank 9 giant dragons and the 2 8-crown demon masters. One had to know that it was only at rank 8. The Tai Chi magical domain was not 1 magical domain, but 2, released by Mao Tai and Wu Yangye respectively. When they released the power of the magical domain at the same time, the Tai Chi magical domain produced an effect similar to the yin-yang dual fire combination skill. Faced with the opponent's released mana, the Tai Chi magical domain immediately erupted with a powerful counterattack, forcibly breaking the opponent's wishful thinking. Moreover, the intense attribute suppression mixed with Dong's mana was fully released. The Diamond Dragon moved at this moment. The 2 elders of the Demon Alliance did not dare to wait any longer. Once the effect of the attribute suppression was fully produced, they would become even more passive. The opponent was more difficult to deal with than they had imagined. Under the illumination of the yellow radiance, the crystal clear bodies of the 2 diamond dragons looked as if they were made of gold. They went straight for the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. The left and right elders raised the war hammers in their hands, and the sky shadow of the earth element totem appeared behind them. Almost at the same time, they attacked Hyoheim and Ajin. The sacred evolution fire dragon did not retreat. Instead, it moved forward. With a twist and a spring, it had already closed in on the right-hand elder. At this moment, Ajin, who did not have the ability to fly, actually leaped over the head of the Wulyangya and went straight for the right-hand elder. It should be known that once she was unable to find a foothold after completing her attack, even if she was slightly more powerful, she would definitely die if she fell from a height of 1,000 meters. Her courage alone was enough to make others admire her. Ajin naturally had her reasons for leaping out. After all, the sacred evolution fire dragon was Ji Dong's mount. It released the aura of the ultimate dual fire magic, which would have the opposite effect on her ultimate Ingold. Only by leaving the sacred evolution fire dragon could she unleash her full strength. The eunuch maker opened up in the air. The huge golden scissors shone like autumn water. Facing the right-hand elder's heavy hammer, Ajin actually ignored it. Her eunuch maker went straight for the right-hand elder's waist, as if she wanted to perish together with him. Furthermore, she was extremely fast. Because she had leaped out from the head of the sacred evolution fire dragon, the right-hand elder was caught off guard. Is this girl crazy? This was the right-hand elder's first thought. He was not a kind person, but he also treasured his life. Ajin's gaze was so cold, as if she did not care about life or death. The eunuch maker did not leave any room for negotiation. She attacked with all her might. The right-hand elder did not dare to take the risk because the pig bet was his life. Even though he had already lived for more than 90 years, he could not bear to die. Faced with Ajin's desperate attack, he could only helplessly retract the heavy hammer in his hand and smash it towards the eunuch maker. At the same time, the diamond dragon flapped its wings and released a powerful shockwave. It coordinated perfectly with the right-hand elder's attack. With a crisp crack, the eunuch maker suddenly released a strange golden demonic pattern. After the demonic pattern appeared, the dense yellow shock wave in the air strangely broke in the middle and passed by Ajin's two sides. Ajin's eunuch maker had already closed up before it collided with the opponent's heavy hammer. It slapped out horizontally and coincidentally collided with the heavy hammer. The sound of metal colliding produced a violent shockwave, and Ajin was sent flying high into the air. However, the eunuch maker in her hand had already opened up again. This time, it was aimed at the right-hand elder's neck. The golden demonic pattern earlier was a skill that came with the eunuch maker, Shield Breaker. Any area of effect defensive or support type skills would be attacked by the eunuch maker's sharp aura. The diamond dragon shockwave was directly cut in half. It was not called a substandard god weapon for nothing. It was precisely because of this substandard god weapon that Ajin did not fall into a disadvantageous position when facing an opponent with a powerful mount. The sharp aura that came from the eunuch maker allowed the right-hand elder to fully understand what was called sharpness. It was the sharpness that belonged to ultimate Ingold. Ajin's attack was too fast. Even though she had suffered a strong shock, her attack did not stop at all. The right-hand elder raised the heavy hammer in his hand and went straight for Ajin's eunuch maker. Even though Ajin had ultimate demonic power, her demonic power was only over level 60 after all. The right-hand elder knew very well that as long as he and the diamond dragon worked together, Ajin would definitely not be his match. Even if he released a sure kill attack with his mount, it would be enough to completely suppress Ajin. However, Ajin had suddenly pounced from the sacred evolution fire's dragon head. Her attack was extremely sharp and swift, and she did not give him any time to adjust at all. He could only choose to meet force with force. Faced with the eunuch maker that was going for his neck, the right-hand elder could only meet it head-on. He believed that as long as he blocked Ajin with this attack, she would not be able to use force in the air. He was already in an invincible position. It was only a matter of time before he defeated his opponent. However, the moment the heavy hammer was about to hit the eunuch maker, Ajin's entire body suddenly curled up in the air, and the eunuch maker in her hand also retracted by a meter. The heavy hammer was originally aimed at the joint where the two blades intersected. With her retracting, the right-hand elder's heavy hammer missed. Oh no! The right-hand elder's expression changed. He wanted to change his move, but it was already too late. Amidst the clanging sound, the eunuch maker closed and cut the handle of the heavy hammer. Brilliant golden flowing light erupted from the blade of the scissors, and an unparalleled aura of sharpness instantly filled the air. Just as the right-hand elder channeled mana into the heavy hammer with all his might, the blade of the scissors had already condensed, and the handle of the heavy hammer was cut off just like that. The huge hammer head broke through the air, and the originally long-handled war hammer turned into a long staff. While the right-hand elder was fighting Ah Quan, the left-hand elder was also fighting against Ji Dong on the other side. When Ah Jin pounced, the left-hand elder and the right-hand elder were telepathically connected. They immediately made the right choice, and that was to keep Ji Dong occupied, putting aside defeating him. As long as this ultimate devil master with a mount couldn't save the other person, the left-hand elder was confident that his brother could easily kill Ah Jin. Countless shadows of the hammer bloomed in the air, and the thick aura of earth element turned into the most concentrated mana waves. The diamond dragon opened its mouth, and 10 rays of thick yellow light condensed in the air. The mana was converted into the most direct element, and solidified into 10 thick and heavy shields of the golden state. At the same time, they densely covered the sacred evolution fire dragon's head and feet, like a huge cage pressing down. How could Ji Dong not think of what the left-hand elder could think of? The moment his opponent made his move, Yi Futian had already seen through his opponent's intentions. He didn't care about the Diamond Dragon's 10 Vajra shields because he had absolute trust in the sacred evolution fire dragon. He completely believed that his mount partner would not be any weaker than his opponents. He pointed the blazing sword in his right hand forward, and violent ultimate yang fire magic gathered in an instant. The blazing sword shone brightly, and the fiery red blade instantly turned pure gold. The tyrannical Xingwu primordial yang sacred fire was unleashed at full force under the enhancement of the blazing sword. He didn't care about the shadows of the hammer at all, and with the accurate judgment of the flame of soul, he stabbed at his opponent's body. At this moment, the advantage of the huge size of the blazing sword was revealed. The opponent's heavy hammer was not even 7 meters long, but the flaming barred dual swords in Ji Dong's hands were 9 meters long. He pointed the blazing sword forward, and the scorching sun devour was integrated into the sword. Then a 3-meter sword radiance shot out, reaching a length of 12 meters in an instant. No matter how powerful the left-hand elder's heavy hammer attack was, Ji Dong's blazing sword would be able to pierce through his body before he could smash into Ji Dong. What would it feel like to be pierced by a sword that was 3 meters wide and 9 meters long? Even a refined martial artist would not dare to try it carelessly. Even the sword radiance was not something that a human body could withstand unless they were wearing a divine artifact armor. Attacking the enemy's weakness, although Ji Dong did not use a valiant attack like Ajin, he was still trying his best to gain the upper hand in his attack. At the same time, Ji Dong's other hand was not idle either. The blazing sword stabbed forward, and the flaming sword slashed downwards. It contained the power of the Dark Moon Claw. In this period of time, Ji Dong had been trying to integrate his 2 Sovereign King skills into the attacks of the Fierce Flame Steps and Fiery Steps. These 2 demigod-ranked, long-handled weapons gave him a strong boost. It was something that the original Demon Lord Yin Yang armor and Sun and Moon Dual Radiance gloves could not compare to. Otherwise, that 8-crown Demon Master Tian Xie would not have been beaten to the point where he could not fight back. Du Sikong sat on the back of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon and watched the battle in front of him with widened eyes. He could clearly feel the strong confidence radiating from Ji Dong. Without such confidence, he would not have chosen to turn around and counterattack. When the flaming bar's 2 swords each shot out a terrifying 3-meter sword radiance, the god of wine could not help but be shocked. He was completely sure that if he were to face these two weapons, he would not stand a chance at all. Jidong's ultimate dual fire magic, coupled with the yin-yang dual fire substandard divine artifact heavy sword, was simply perfect. The left elder, who was facing the blazing sword head-on, naturally had a deeper feeling. The blazing sword erupted with an indomitable aura. He did not have any hesitation at all. The shadows of the hammers that filled the sky instantly merged into one and smashed towards the tip of the blazing sword. The huge hammerhead expanded once again, displaying its own attributes. Amidst the imposing aura, the size of the hammerhead had increased to a diameter of 3 meters. Compared to the right elder, the left elder was considered lucky. At the very least, he was able to display the power of his excellent magic weapon. He was not like the right elder, who was cut off by the eunuch maker before he could display his power. What would happen when the proud king's blazing sword collided with the incomparably thick and heavy fifth earth heavy hammer? Chapter 271. In the sky, the 5 dots of light expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they formed 5 huge balls of mixed light in the sky. The huge light even covered their bodies. The blue and green of the wood element, the red and blue of the fire element, the yellow and gray of the earth element, the white and gold of the metal element, and the black and purple of the water element. After these 5 balls of light formed, the magic elements in the air crazily gathered towards them. The 5 balls of light resonated with each other, and the entire sky was instantly covered by 10 different colors of light. Whether it was the divine evolution fire dragon's Tai Chi demonic domain or the earth demonic domain of the 2 devil alliance's guardian elders, all of them disappeared at this moment. The powerful pressure forced Jidong, Jin, and the divine evolution fire dragon to retract all of their magic power. After that, he endured it because of Jidong's status as a disciplinary elder. When he faced these demon masters earlier, Jidong realized that although they could form the 5 elements combination skill, they could only use the lowest standard skills. They couldn't use higher level skills. Otherwise, he and Ajin wouldn't have been able to rush out of the cave so easily. At this moment, these 25 demon masters had completely given up on their power amplification abilities and released their magical power with all their might. The effect was to form a huge cage in the sky. Transmigration sounded like a simple skill, but one could only feel its power when facing it. The effect of transmigration was that it could ignore any pure magical power attack in an instant. It could instantly turn its body incorporeal and pass through. After using it once, it had to be adjusted for 10 minutes before it could be used again. With the Divine Evolution Fire Dragon's current strength at the 8th level, it could only cross 100 meters. When Mao Tai and Wu Yangye evolved into 10th level magical beasts, the effect of transmigration would be at least 1,000 meters. With this heavenly gift, it meant that any barrier-type magical skill would not be able to obstruct it as long as it was less than 100 meters thick, let alone the Diamond Dragon's Vajra shield. The Diamond Dragon rapidly descended, and the left-hand elder finally had time to swing his hammer to meet Jidong's flame sword. When he heard that Du Ming had become Jidong's disciple a few days ago, he was somewhat dissatisfied in his heart. Although his son's philosophy was different from his, he was still his only son. Du Sikong had high expectations for his only son, who was even more talented than him. Seeing that his son had become the disciple of someone younger than him, Du Sikong was extremely dissatisfied. If it weren't for the fact that he was in front of the Sky Water City's magician branch leaders, he would have directly exploded. However, their attack stopped there. It wasn't that Jidong didn't want to chase after the left-hand elder, but he didn't have that kind of time. Jin, who had been sent flying, turned in the air and began to fall. At this time, he had to rescue Jin first. With a loud bang, the flame sword heavily struck the left-hand elder's hammer. The left-hand elder only felt his palm heat up, and a terrifying explosive force instantly burst forth. At this time, he was in a state of panic, and the amount of mana he could output was limited. Jidong's ultimate dual fire attribute suppression was completely unleashed. The ultimate Yang fire mana from the previous Scorching Sun Devour and the ultimate Yin fire on the flame sword immediately produced the explosive effect of the yin-yang dual attribute skill. With his own strength, Ji Dong had completely conquered the Bartenders Guild president. Not to mention his son becoming Ji Dong's disciple. If it was possible, Du Sikong even wanted his daughter to be Ji Dong's disciple. Age wasn't a problem. Those who were more experienced were the masters. The left-hand elder only felt his vision blur. In the next moment, the sacred evolution fire dragon actually disappeared from the encirclement of the 10 Vajra shields. However, not only did the flame sword attack not stop, it instantly accelerated and arrived above the left-hand elder's head. Ji Dong faced the left-hand elder of the demonic alliance, and the flame sword faced the heavy hammer. He didn't dodge and completely met force with force. The flame sword was filled with the arrogance of a king. When the hammer and the sword collided, an extremely terrifying bang sounded in the air. The huge explosive force of the ultimate yang fire directly shook the left-hand elder's heavy hammer. At the same time, Ji Dong's flame sword also rebounded. With the left-hand elder's complete advantage in demonic power, Ji Dong shouldn't have been able to stabilize his body. However, his right arm strangely shook and trembled, forcibly dispersing the rebounding force. This was the application of the Flying Serpent's strength transformation spell. Mao Tai and Wu Yangye were only activated at the last moment without any warning. Furthermore, they were so fast that it was as if they had teleported. Ji Dong's flame sword also teleported. If it wasn't for the instant delay after teleporting, the left-hand elder would have been beheaded by now. There was no sign of the reinforcements that Ji Dong mentioned at all. However, Du Sikong wasn't the least bit displeased. He understood that with Ji Dong and Ah Jin's strength, they could defeat the other party head-on. If they insisted on escaping, how could the other party stop them? In particular, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's teleportation skill had shocked him greatly. His Frost Earth Dragon was simply trash compared to the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, as expected of the Thunder Emperor's junior brother. From the looks of it, this young man's strength didn't seem to be inferior to Fury's. Every magical beast had its own innate skill. Even the weakest magical beasts had their own unique skills. The only difference was the number and power of their unique skills. Without a doubt, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon was a powerful magical beast that had the strength of a level 8 magical beast the moment it was born. Naturally, its unique skills were extremely powerful and even unique. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's teleportation made Ji Dong clearly feel that the range of his teleportation skill had been reduced from 100 meters to 30 meters. Du Sikong was shocked. It was a shock of pleasant surprise. On the Demonic Alliance's side, it was a completely different kind of shock. This time, the Demonic Alliance's demon masters that had gathered at Northern Mang Mountain made up almost 1/3 of the entire Demonic Alliance's strength. The young Alliance master, the Lady in Gray, had even come personally. They were determined to get the vast sea fine wine. Before the operation, the plan was extremely thorough. Not only did they calculate the strength of Tianshui City clearly, they also calculated the strength of the Bartenders Guild and the Demon Master Guild's Tianshui City branch. However, this operation that was almost in the bag had an accident. Until now, the people of Demonic Alliance still didn't understand how Ji Dong and Ah Jin entered the cave. In other words, there were 5 Metal Element Demon Masters, 5 Earth Element Demon Masters, and so on. Each group of 5 gathered in 5 different directions in the sky. Each group had 3 Yin Element Demon Masters and 2 Yang Element Demon Masters that complemented each other. If Ji Dong and the others hadn't killed a group of Yang Element Demon Masters, there would have been 3 Yin Element Demon Masters and 3 Yang Element Demon Masters. Their strength would have been even more terrifying. Without Ji Dong's orders, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon swung its body and shot out, catching Ah Jin's body firmly. Looking at the cold light emitted by the eunuch maker, even Ji Dong couldn't help but feel a chill in his lower body. Not only was this odd-shaped weapon powerful, it also had a strong deterrent effect on male demon masters. 1/5 of the hammer's head had been forcibly blown open, and the mana imprinted on it was frantically leaking out. That excellent long-handled magic tool had been destroyed by the Raging Flame Swords and the Raging Flame Swords. The left elder and his diamond dragon hadn't been able to entangle Ji Yunshu, and they had fallen even faster under that heavy blow. An illusory light appeared on the sacred evolution fire dragon's body. Black and white light engulfed it in Ji Dong and Du Si Kong, making it seem unreal. The sacred evolution fire dragon's innate skill, transmigration. However, just like how elders would trust his diamond dragon, Ji Dong had absolute trust in his sacred evolution fire dragon. The diamond dragon wouldn't disappoint elders. How could the sacred evolution fire dragon, which treated Ji Dong like a father, disappoint Ji Dong? The Bartenders Guild needed help from the Magician Guild. How could he offend the Magician Guild at this time? For the past few days, he had been busy making arrangements for today's matter, so he didn't have time to ask his son. Now, when he saw Ji Dong and Ajin destroy the weapons of the two highest-ranked magicians in the Demon Alliance with their tyrannical power, and even gain the upper hand in the face of the pressure from the two ninth Grey Diamond Dragons, he finally understood that Ji Dong's position as the disciplinary elder was not obtained through nepotism. He truly had the ability to do so. Although he was a 6-crown magician, his power was comparable to an 8-crown magician's, and he might even surpass an 8-crown magician's existence. For the first time in history, Du Si Kong felt that his son's foresight was better than his own. This teacher was definitely worth it. The 5 elements formation formed by 25 6-crown magicians was infinitely close to the 5 elements yin-yang world that the 10 saints had displayed on the Holy Evil Island. Although the pressure in the area was still lacking compared to the 5 elements yin-yang world, the area it covered was much wider. It had all 5 elements and 10 elements of magic. This was definitely a top-notch barrier technique. However, even so, Elderswood didn't panic at all, because the Diamond Dragon's 10 diamond shields were already in place. 2 of his shields were facing Ji Dong's heavy sword that fell from the sky. The magical beast's mind was connected to its masters, so the Diamond Dragon naturally came to Elderswood's rescue at the most crucial moment. A cold light flashed in Ji Dong's eyes, and his magic burst out. The magic of the Dark Moon Claw turned into the Dark Moon Flame, and the glaring black flames completely distorted the air. Elderswood's original plan was very good, and he didn't care about Ji Dong's other sword. As a guardian elder of the Demonic Alliance, he was also very knowledgeable, and the Demonic Alliance had very detailed records of people with extreme magic power. He didn't think that Ji Dong could defeat him, and the only thing he needed to pay attention to was the 2-headed monster that made the Diamond Dragon uneasy. He had already used 80% of his strength to meet the hammer. According to his thinking, even if Ji Dong could block it, he would definitely be shaken to the point of being unsteady. Only by using the magical beast's power to quickly retreat could he dissolve the shock, and the other sword would naturally collapse on its own. However, he didn't expect that Ji Dong didn't even use the power of the sacred evolution fire dragon, and could actually dissolve the power of his attack so easily. This way, the flame sword that had turned black, filled with black flames, and brought with it a fan-shaped radiance, had already arrived as promised, and went straight for Elderswood's head. The 25 Demon Alliance Demon Masters quickly separated in the air, but this time they weren't in groups of 5 different attributes. Instead, they were in groups of Demon Masters of a single attribute. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of friction, the bright yellow light shield almost instantly turned black, and in the next moment, it was already burning with black flames. In such a rushed situation, the 9th Grey Diamond Dragon's instantaneous defense could not stop the Flame Sword's downward attack, but it still managed to slow down the Flame Sword for a moment, and it was this moment that gave Elderswood a chance of survival. Even though they were missing a group of Demon Masters, when the 25 Demon Masters rose into the air at the same time, the confidence in Ji Dong and Ah Jin's eyes showed a trace of wavering. Each group of 5 formed a huge assembly in the air. These Demon Masters first fused with the mana of their mounts, and then directly emitted the purest mana. 5 Demon Masters of the same attribute, Yin and Yang, released their own attributes, and the 5 of them infused their mana into one point, emitting an extremely large amount of mana waves of their respective attributes. It was no longer a pure yin and yang, but a fusion of yin and yang. Although the degree of fusion was limited due to the imbalance of mana, the mana produced by the fusion of 5 6-crown demon masters was still extremely terrifying. Elders will only felt goosebumps all over his body. The heavy sword came too quickly. Although Jidong's first attack did not cause any damage to him, defending against the powerful attack of the Scorching Sun Devourer still consumed a lot of mana. The head of the heavy hammer in his hand was still golden red, emitting high heat. It barely managed to keep it from melting, and there was no time for him to block the attack. At this time, the cooperation between the demon masters and their mounts showed its crucial role. The diamond dragon let out an ear-piercing dragon roar, and a bright yellow light shield instantly burst forth from its body. At the same time, it suddenly retracted its wings, and in that instant, it stopped flying. Its huge body brought Elderswood down as if it was a free-fall. There is no path to heaven and no door to earth. 5 elements formation. The gray-clothed girl was now really angry. There were only 2 of them, but they managed to repel the 2 guardian elders of the demonic alliance, and even destroyed their mana weapon. If she let them escape, it would definitely be an unimaginable blow to the demonic alliance. She could no longer care about anything else. She made up her mind to destroy the man and woman in front of her with all her might. Even Jidong himself did not expect that he would be able to gain the upper hand so quickly against an 8-crown demon master. At the same time that he destroyed the opponent's giant hammer, Ajin used the eunuch maker to cut off Elderswood's hammer. With the help of the subdivine weapon, Jidong and Ajin had the upper hand as soon as they started fighting. Du Sikong was completely stunned. Were they really 6-crown demon masters? Were they really only as old as they looked? The combat power that Jidong and Ajin had exploded in an instant was completely beyond his imagination. Chapter 272. On the whole, this kind of 5 elements formation could only suppress Jidong and Ajin. It could only restrict their mana for a certain period of time, and at the same time, create a strong pressure on them. However, it was not realistic to rely on this kind of 5 elements formation to trap them. The reason was very simple. These 6-crown demon masters had limited mana and could not release it endlessly. Moreover, they could not use the 5 elements yin-yang world to attack like the heavenly stem saints. They could only set up a formation. This was the difference between the two. It could be said that it was the difference between ultimate mana and ordinary mana. Even so, the fact that the Demon Alliance could do this was enough to shock Jidong, Ajin, and Du Sikong. After the 5 elements formation was formed, Jidong and Ajin, with their ultimate mana, felt a little better. Their overall strength was only reduced by about 30%, and the attributes of ultimate mana were also reduced to a certain extent. However, for the God of Wine, Du Sikong, it was not so simple. With his strength at the 7-crown level, his own mana was forcibly suppressed to the extent that he could only use 30% or 40% of it. Not to mention breaking out of this huge cage, just resisting the huge pressure produced by the 5 elements formation had consumed a lot of his energy. After a long time, he was afraid that he would not be able to hold on before the enemy did anything. Seeing that Jidong and Ajin seemed to be fine, Du Sikong could not help but admire them more. Jidong did not urge the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon to act rashly. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon had just used its teleportation skill, and it still needed some time before it could use its innate skill again. Moreover, the 5 elements formation in front of him, which was formed by 25 magicians working together, could not be broken through by crossing a distance of 30 meters. Jidong did a simple calculation in his heart. Under the situation where the 5 elements were mutually reinforcing, the 6-crown level magician's consumption of mana to form this formation was not too fast. They could at least hold on for an hour to 2 hours. He was not in a hurry at all. The simplest reason was that as long as they were within the range of the 5 elements formation, no matter who it was, they would be affected. They had ultimate mana, and their resistance was much stronger than that of ordinary magicians. However, The people of the Demon Alliance did not have ultimate mana. In this situation, they could only trap them, but could not hurt them. Time was not a problem. They just had to wait. They wanted to see what the other side could do to kill him and Ajin. Did they expect the 5 elements formation to suppress them for a certain period of time and cause them to run out of mana? The yin-yang fire formation lit up behind Jidong. Even the 5 elements formation could not stop the use of the 5 elements formation. With these two formations, Jidong could almost achieve equal output and absorption of mana. He would not consume too much of his own mana. He could absolutely afford it. The 5 groups of light formed by the 5 elements formation were like 5 fulcrums that supported the sky. Seeing that the sacred evolution fire dragon, Jidong, Ajin, and Du Sikong were trapped in it, the girl in gray from the Demon Alliance's face became even colder. The 2 elders of the Demon Alliance had already returned to her side. They were ashamed and did not say a word. The girl in gray glanced at them coldly and said, "After so many years of hard work, is this the surprise that the 2 elders have brought me? Underestimating the opponent is playing with your life. If you had cooperated with each other from the beginning, with your contract, would it have been so easy for the opponent to break your weapons?" The right-hand elder still wanted to explain, but the left-hand elder hurriedly gave him a look and said respectfully, "Alliance Master, we were careless. We are willing to be punished." The gray-clothed girl snorted. "Let's talk about this after we've dealt with this matter. What a bartender's guild. They managed to find 2 people with mana at their peak. I like to see just how strong they are. If they manage to break through the 5 elements formation, then we must stop them. We cannot let them leave this place alive today." "Yes." The left and right guardian elders on the back of the diamond dragon bowed at the same time. The girl in gray shouted in a deep voice, "Little White, let's go." The big silver bird let out a long cry. It spread its wings and directly entered the 5 elements formation. The 5 elements formation was a unidirectional boundary. In other words, it was very easy to enter from the outside without any obstruction. However, if one wanted to leave, they would have to destroy the entire boundary. Seeing the girl in gray riding the big silver bird into the 5 elements formation, Jidong could not help but be stunned. He did not understand what gave the girl in gray the confidence to face him and Ajin alone. The 5 elements formation should also suppress her at the same time. Furthermore, she did not have ultimate mana, so the suppression effect would only be stronger. Even if she had the miraculous 7 crowns, it would be impossible for her to deal with him, Ajin, and the sacred evolution fire dragon. However, something unexpected happened to Jidong. When the big silver bird carried the girl in gray into the 5 elements formation, a layer of crystal-like gray light enveloped her and the big bird. Jidong was surprised to find that the suppression of all 5 elements in the 5 elements formation did not seem to have any effect on them at all. The girl in gray was still calm. The layer of gray light was very similar to her long hair. It was clearly the fluctuation of ultimate mana. According to what Yao Qianshu had said, in this world, other than the 9-crown Devil Master, there could only be one ultimate Devil Master for each attribute, be it the light attribute or the dark attribute Devil Master. Ajin herself was already an anomaly because she had woken up from the ice, but now there was another earth attribute ultimate Devil Master in front of him. This made Jidong somewhat puzzled. Could it be that what Yao Qianshu had said back then was wrong? Moreover, even if the leader of the demonic alliance was an ultimate earth Devil Master, he should have been suppressed by the 5 elements formation. It was impossible for the 5 elements formation to have the ability to recognize. Even the 5 elements yin-yang world used by ultimate Devil Masters could not do so. You're wondering why I'm not affected by the 5 elements formation, right? The girl in gray stood on the back of the big silver bird and looked coldly at Jidong and Ajin. She was not in a hurry to attack at all. It was as if she had come out to negotiate. Jidong did not hide the doubts in his heart. He nodded and said, "That's right. I'm wondering why you're not affected by the 5 elements formation. It's impossible even for an ultimate Devil Master." The gray-clothed girl snorted. "I'm not an ultimate Demon Master. From your point of view, I'm just an ordinary Demon Master. Even my demonic energy isn't something that I've cultivated. However, even if you're an ultimate demon master, you won't be able to escape from me. Why do you think I set up the 5 elements formation? To directly force you to submit? I'm not that stupid. The 5 elements formation has a limited effect on ultimate devil masters. I only order my subordinates to set up this formation for one purpose, to prevent you from escaping. I want to personally defeat you. Hearing the girl in gray say that she was not an ultimate devil master, Ji Dong's doubts increased. He said, "What I don't understand is, what gives you such confidence? You'll find out soon." The girl in gray slowly raised her right hand. A crystalline gray light suddenly lit up on her hand. As soon as the gray light appeared, it immediately spread from the 2 ends of her palm. In the blink of an eye, it had already extended to 2 meters long. The entire staff seemed to be made of gray crystal. At the head of the staff was a sculpture of a woman. It was about 1 foot long, and the carving was very lifelike. Gray light flowed, and rings of gray light constantly radiated from it. The light around the girl in gray and her big silver bird was condensed from this gray light. Ji Dong and Ajin exchanged glances. Even though they were in the formation of 5 elements, they could actually feel a suffocating pressure from the demonic energy of their earth. Shock appeared at the same time, and they said at almost the same time, "God artifact?" A sliver of arrogance appeared in the girl's eyes. She said, "Yes, an earth divine weapon, the staff of the goddess of earth. I don't have your ultimate talent, but I can easily defeat you with this staff of the goddess of earth." It really was a divine weapon. This was the first time Ji Dong had felt a sense of danger since he met the people from the demonic alliance. The divine weapon in the girl's hand gave him a different feeling from the thunder god's axe. If the thunder god's axe represented lightning, then the staff of the goddess of earth represented everything of the earth element. They were both divine weapons, but the quality of the staff of the goddess of earth was higher than the thunder god's axe. Just from the fact that the divine weapon could resist the pressure from the 5 elements formation, one could imagine how terrifying it was. The girl in gray said indifferently, "Remember my name. I'm Meow Meow. I'll give you one last chance now. If you choose to join the demonic alliance, you can live. I can even make you elders of the demonic alliance. Otherwise, you'll have to pay for the deaths of the disciples of the demonic alliance." Ji Dong smiled indifferently and said, "I've never tasted a divine weapon before. It's a good chance for me to try it today. What do you say, Ajin?" Ajin said nothing, but her body shone with golden light. Her golden armor covered her entire body with a clang, covering her beautiful face. Ji Dong raised the 2 swords in his hands at the same time, and the flames of his soul in his body throbbed violently. He knew that today's battle would be the greatest challenge he would ever face. It was also the first time he would feel the pressure of a divine weapon. He felt rather regretful. Why did he not experience the terrifying power of Senior Brother's Thunder God's axe before? If he had gotten used to it back then, it might have been easier for him to face it now. The leader of the demonic alliance, Meow Meow, pointed forward with her staff of the goddess of earth. Immediately, everything before Ji Dong and Ajin turned gray. The pressure from the 5 elements formation was still present, and the air seemed to have become sticky as if they were stuck in a swamp. The sensitivity of their bodies plummeted. Both he, Ajin, and the sacred evolution fire dragon experienced the same feeling. It was not a seal, but a restriction. Ji Dong understood that he could not wait any longer. Otherwise, once his opponent unleashed the full might of the divine weapon, it would be even more difficult for him to stop it. He flipped his right hand, and a ray of light shot out. It was not an attack aimed at Meow Meow, but at Ajin. Ajin raised his hand and caught it. It was the mid-level ultimate move scroll that Ji Dong had obtained from the Demonic Arts Guild's Demon Master Tian Xie. The scroll was of the metal element. Although it was of the metal element, it was clearly easier for Ajin to use it. Moreover, Ji Dong had many ways to protect himself, while Ajin only had that set of armor. He was already looking for a way out for himself and Ajin. From this, it was clear how much importance he placed on his opponent. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon moved as soon as Ji Dong tossed the scroll to Ajin. The black and white light that had been forced back into its body shone again, forcefully holding up the sky within the five elements formation. At the same time, Mao Tai and Wu Yangye roared at the same time. The dragon spat out a ball of golden flames and a ball of black flames in the sky, forming a Tai Chi ball that went straight for Miao Miao. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's ultimate double fireball was even more powerful than Ji Dong's own full-powered attack. If the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon was measured by the ranks of Demon Masters, then it would be a seven-crowned Demon Master of Dual Fire. Purely in terms of cultivation, it was above Ji Dong. In fact, like Ji Dong, it possessed the origin of chaos. However, the chaos in its body had not merged with its spiritual energy, so it did not have a fire of its soul. The powerful pressure of the five elements formation only weakened the Tai Chi fireball a little. When its magic burst out completely, a twisted passage appeared in the air. The Tai Chi fireball instantly accelerated in the air, and the shadow of the soaring twin flames formation could be vaguely seen inside the fireball. With the help of the fire of the soul, Ji Dong and the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon's spiritual energy were connected. All his skills were absorbed by the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon like a copy. As long as it could use a skill, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon could basically use it. Sometimes, when Ji Dong thought that it could evolve into a magical beast of at least the 10th rank in the future, he found it a little unbelievable. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon at the 8th rank was already so powerful. What would it be like when it advanced to the 10th rank? The thick gray air only allowed them to vaguely see Hazy's figure, but Ji Dong was not worried at all. Even the five elements formation could only suppress his magic, but not his spiritual energy. It was even more helpless against the fire of the soul. He could completely lock on a Hazy's position. Just as the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon launched its attack, Miao Miao also made her move. She pointed the staff of the Earth Goddess forward, and a circle of thick gray mana instantly swept out. Almost in an instant, it condensed into a large net that enveloped everything. Chapter 273. The Tai Chi fireball came into contact with the big net. Suddenly, the air shook violently, and the Tai Chi fireball turned gray. Even the powerful Yin and Yang fireball couldn't blow up the gray light. Terrifying magic waves bloomed in the air. Ji Dong's expression became extremely solemn. He could only feel that after the ultimate double fireball exploded in the gray magic power actually absorbed the explosive force. Was the artifact really so powerful? Misty's cold voice came, "Don't waste your energy. It's useless. In front of the staff of the Earth Goddess, you won't even have a chance to escape. The staff of the Earth Goddess is the treasure of the Demon Alliance. It can exert the defense of the Earth Goddess to the extreme. Not to mention you. Even a Supreme Master may not be able to break through the defense of the staff of the Earth Goddess, let alone you. Although I don't have the ultimate magic power, I've been with the staff of the Earth Goddess since the day I was born. Everything in my body, bloodline, and magic power have been completely integrated with it. It's precisely because the staff of the Earth Goddess can sense and absorb the Yin Earth magic power that I can have level 73 magic power at the age of 21. With it, although I'm not an ultimate magic master, my magic power will be transformed by the staff of the Earth Goddess and release the ultimate magic power of the same level." Ji Dong was extremely shocked after hearing Miao Miao's words. He was not shocked because of the staff of the Goddess of Earth Goddess, but because of the Demonic Alliance. Ever since he came into contact with the Demonic Alliance had brought him too many surprises. The strict internal system, powerful strength, the initial application of the 5-element combination skill, and the Alliance Master in front of him who had merged with the Divine Weapon. All of these showed him the results of the Demonic Alliance's 1,000 years of accumulation. Compared with the Demon Alliance, the Magic Guild was undoubtedly much more powerful, but even the Magic Guild didn't have such research results. Why? Because the Magic Guild had too many mundane things to deal with, and the Demon Alliance, as the dark side, could spend more time on real accumulation. With this, the Demon Alliance became stronger step by step. No wonder Misty could become the leader of the Demon Alliance at the age of 21. Her body had fused with the branch of the earth goddess, so it could be said that she herself was a divine artifact, or it could be said that she used her own body as a sacrifice to use this divine artifact. This method could be said to be quite tyrannical, but it was also quite effective. As long as the staff of the earth goddess was still there and had not been destroyed, no one could harm her. However, her soul and body could only be loyal to the staff of the earth goddess for the rest of her life, and she had to constantly use her own life force to nourish the divine artifact. It could be imagined that her life was much shorter than that of an ordinary person, and it was precisely because of this that she had such great power. She was still very young, and for at least a few decades, the Demon Alliance will be led by her, the owner of the divine artifact. Once her magic power broke through the 9 crowns, even her own Grandmaster, His Majesty, would not be able to subdue her. Surrender. This is your only chance. Our Demon Alliance needs talents, and I want to obtain the vast sea jade nectar to add talents to the Demon Alliance. If the two of you are willing to join the Demon Alliance, even if I already have the upper hand, I can promise you that I will let President Du Seekong go, and I won't take his vast sea jade nectar. To the Demon Alliance, your value is even higher than the vast sea jade nectar. What a pity, Ji Dong said indifferently. What's a pity? Meow Meow's voice instantly turned cold and said, a pity that the divine artifact fell into the hands of my Demon Alliance? Let me tell you, Ji Dong, what's wrong with my Demon Alliance? We are just a group of magicians that are not accepted by the mainstream society. Yes, our Demon Alliance has done a lot of evil things in the past, but in the past few hundred years, what have we done? Even if we captured the women and children of the Bartenders Guild, we did not kill them. It's not that we are afraid of the Magician Guild. They want to encircle us, but I can tell you that it's impossible. After a few hundred years of recuperation, we are no longer the same as before. If they want to find us, it will be harder than ascending to heaven. Yes, our ancestors did a lot of evil things, but as the descendants, what have we done? The purpose of our Demon Alliance has long changed. You have also seen it, the 5 elements formation. Is this a power that the Magician Guild can possess? In terms of magic skills, combination skills, and the combination of the 5 elements, our research is even more profound than the Magician Guild. Are you not interested in these? As long as you join the Demon Alliance, all of these can become your ability. Even if you have an ancient unique skill like the 5 elements formation, you still need a lot of practical experience to better display the effect of the formation. Ji Dong's heart trembled. He did not expect Meow Meow to even see through his 5 elements formation. What she said was not a lie, but the truth. From a certain point of view, the research and development power that the Demon Alliance possessed now did indeed surpass the Magician Guild. What they researched was also quite useful to him, but could he really join the Demon Alliance? The answer was of course no. President Meow Meow, you misunderstood me. I said it's a pity, not because of the staff of the Goddess of Earth. After listening to Meow Meow's words, Ji Dong had a new understanding of the Demon Alliance. Although he would not join, his hatred for the Demon Alliance had obviously decreased, and he even regretted killing the dozens of Demon Alliance masters. I said it's a pity because you still can't unleash the true power of the staff of the Goddess of Earth. Even though it can transform your mana into ultimate Earth, and even give you great power, you are still a 7-crown Demon Master. If you want to unleash the true power of the divine weapon, even if your body has fused with the divine weapon, you still need the same amount of mana to unleash the full power of the divine weapon. Therefore, you still can't keep me here. Although this 5 elements formation is not bad, it is not flexible enough. Since you have shown me a powerful divine weapon, then, in return, I will show you my true power. Before that, please allow me to apologize to you. Because of the first impression, we have killed a large number of Demon Alliance Demon Masters. Unless you are willing to join my Demon Alliance, I will definitely use your lives as a sacrifice to the dead warriors of the Demon Alliance for the sins you have committed. Do you still have strength that you haven't unleashed? Very well, I want to see how you can break through my Sai of the Goddess of Earth and the 5 elements formation, unless you also have a divine weapon. Ji Dong shook his head slowly and said, I don't have a divine weapon, but you have underestimated the 5 element formation. I will show you the true power of this formation. Ajin, step back. Ajin glanced at Ji Dong and slowly stepped back. When Ji Dong spoke to her, he had clearly signaled her with his eyes. Ji Dong's gaze became solemn, and a strong wave of magic continuously burst forth from his body. The black and white yin-yang crown above his head emitted an incomparably dazzling light. His eyes gradually changed color, and a faint white light danced in his eyes. That was the light that belonged to the soul fire. Every time this strong wave of magic flickered, the air would become a little heavier. She also wanted to see how Ji Dong would break through the seal of her divine weapon and the five elements formation. With the staff of the goddess of earth, she could not be affected by the five elements formation. She did not understand how Ji Dong, with his strength of 6 crowns, could resist. Even if the 2 heavy swords in his hands were the quality of a substandard divine weapon, it was impossible for him to succeed. Substandard divine weapons and divine weapons seemed to be only one level apart, but in reality, the difference in power could not be calculated. Whether or not Ji Dong could break through the sai of the goddess of earth that she had set up, there was no doubt that a person with extreme magic, especially one with dual attributes, would be a reference for her future cultivation. This was also an important part of accumulating practical experience. The scorching and flaming dual swords lit up at the same time, and 2 balls of light separated from the swords at the same time. They were 2 human-shaped lights that looked to be in their teens. They were the holy fire elemental body and devil flame elemental body that Ji Dong had condensed before entering the demonic alliance. These 2 elemental bodies were injected into the scorching and flaming dual swords, and under the influence of the scorching and flaming dual swords, they were constantly evolving. Ji Dong would only do this in battle, because this way, the magic he absorbed would be greatly reduced. The holy fire elemental body and devil flame elemental body flew up from the scorching and flaming dual swords at the same time, right in front of Ji Dong. They held each other's hands, and a strong dual fire magic burst out in an instant. The terrifying ultimate magic suddenly spread out, forming a huge ball of light that enveloped the sacred evolution fire dragon and Ji Dong. The 2 elemental bodies burned, and, at the same time, they released all their magic. At the same time, the faint shadows of 2 great kings appeared in the sky. It was also at this time that the pressure from the 5 elements formation and the earth goddess Sai were temporarily extended, unable to affect what Ji Dong was about to do next. Even if the time was extremely short and not enough for Ji Dong and the others to truly break through, it was enough for Ji Dong to do what he was about to do next. A loud and clear phoenix cry sounded, and the eclipse phoenix Hua suddenly flew out from the vermilion bird bracelet. She spread her wings and hovered above Ji Dong's head. Her body also became half white and half black, and her radiance was reflected by the sacred evolution fire dragon beneath Ji Dong. Between them, Ji Dong, who was illuminated by the black and white light, seemed to have changed once again. An unparalleled arrogance bloomed from his body, and the phoenix dance's dragon snake transformation wings spread out completely. He moved the heavy sword in his hands at the same time, and drew a huge, strange formation on both sides of his body. The 2 magic circles were black and white, respectively. When they appeared, Meow Meow's expression finally changed a little, because she could clearly feel that the sigh of the earth goddess released by the staff of the earth goddess was actually shaking slightly after the appearance of the 2 magic circles. It wasn't that the sigh of the earth goddess was about to be broken, but it seemed to be having its mana absorbed by the other party. That's impossible. What kind of formation is this? Meow Meow asked in shock. Even when she saw Ji Dong release his second magical beast, her gaze had only wavered a little, and her impression of Ji Dong had only deepened a little. When she felt the changes in the 2 formations in front of her, she finally understood that Ji Dong's words did not seem to be boasting. Ji Dong said calmly, "You're the first person to see me use these 2 formations in battle, so there's no harm in telling you. These 2 formations are assimilation formations, and it's a new skill that I've comprehended recently. The assimilation formation's function is to assimilate all the magic waves in the outside world and convert it into my own magic, which will then fuse with my body. I can't completely assimilate the mana of your Earth Goddess staff, but I can use the assimilation formation to hold on for a while, temporarily blocking your mana and the suppression of the 5 elements formation. As Ji Dong spoke, 2 strange circular formations appeared above the Eclipse Phoenix Hua and below the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon. Unlike the assimilation formation that Ji Dong had released, they released formations that were formed by the yin-yang fire. In the sky, there were a total of 6 5 elements formations. Not to mention Meow Meow. Even Ah Jin, who had retreated to Du Sikong's side, could not help but change her expression when she saw this. This was the first time she had seen Ji Dong unleash his full power, and she could clearly feel how powerful Ji Dong was at that moment. As she watched Ji Dong's back, she suddenly felt a strong sense of security in her heart for some reason. It was as if as long as this man was around, all danger would not be a problem, and this seemingly powerful enemy before her could not stop him. 6 5 elements formations. This was something that Ji Dong had never tried before. Even though he was in the middle of the Sigh of the Earth Goddess and the 5 elements formation, he could clearly feel that his mana was being replenished at a terrifying speed when the 4 5 elements formations appeared, in addition to his yin-yang fire assimilation formation. The blazing sword in his right hand and the flame sword in his left were raised high into the sky at the same time. 2 incomparably magnificent flames shot out like lightning. At the same time, deafening dragon roars and snake cries rang out at the same time. 6 dragons and 6 snakes were released from the yin-yang crown without holding back. They instantly spread out and filled every part of the light barrier that the 2 elemental bodies had raised. They were like 12 fulcrums that supported the light barrier and prevented mana from entering from the outside world. When she sensed the terrifying mana possessed by the 6 dragons and 6 snakes, Meow Meow's expression finally changed. She could no longer watch as Ji Dong cast the formation calmly. She raised the staff of the Earth Goddess again, and an even more intense gray light instantly burst forth. The entire space within the 5 elements formation could no longer see anything outside. Everything was filled with the powerful mana released by the staff of the Earth Goddess. The pressure increased by several times, and it pressed down on Ji Dong in the center. Chapter 274. The staff of the Earth Goddess burst forth with even more terrifying magic power under the full power of Misty, the leader of the demonic alliance. This was the full power that Misty could release from the staff of the Earth Goddess. Just as Ji Dong said, she was still unable to fully display the power of this divine weapon. One reason was that her magic power was only at the 7 crowns level, and the other reason was that she did not possess the ultimate magic power. However, the enhanced magic power of the staff of the Earth Goddess was still unable to break through the light shield with Ji Dong as the center. Although the light shield of the ultimate dual flame shield looked shaky, it was still able to support it with the power of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes, not allowing Ji Dong to be affected. Only when he was not suppressed by the outside world could he fully display his power. Ji Dong raised the ardent and flame dual swords high up in the air. There was only a foot between the 2 swords. At this moment, his entire being had entered an unprecedented state. His will had completely fused with his soul fire. It was as if he was completely unaware of everything happening in the outside world. A dazzling brilliance radiated from his body. At this moment, the power of Sovereign Ao and was raised to the extreme. What was emitting from his body was a somewhat contradictory temperament. The violence and tyranny of the Flame Monarch, the elegance and coldness of the Dark Flame Devil King. Unexpectedly, both of them appeared on his body at the same time, but they were completely integrated into one, giving him a kind of evil and special charm. With a loud bang, the figure of Ji Dong, who was standing on the body of the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon, suddenly expanded. His whole body instantly turned into a brilliant gold, and then a deep black. The 2 colors flickered alternately, and that terrifying energy fluctuation caused his body to rise to a height of 3 meters. It was the flame monarch body and the dark flame devil king body. Just as the gold and black constantly flickered, the blaze and flame, swords in his hands, continuously burst out rays of light. At this moment, Jidong had truly raised his magic power to the extreme without holding anything back. When the flickering light finally stabilized, the monarch body changed. It was no longer a single flame monarch or dark flame devil king, but a powerful half-white and half-black body of energy, reaching a height of 5 meters. At the chest of this body of energy, a milky white flame slowly jumped. Although the flame looked so small, it had undoubtedly become the heart of Jidong's entire body. No matter who it was, at first glance, the first thing they would see would definitely be this small flame. That huge 5-meter body of the monarch body seemed to have merged with the blaze and flame swords in his hands, and the color of the light was completely the same. Oh no! Looking at this scene, Meow Meow's eyes showed some panic. She seemed to have already sensed what she was going to endure in the next moment, but at this point, she could no longer stop it. The staff of the Earth Goddess in her hand moved in a circle in the air, and a circle of intense gray light flickered. A set of gray full-body armor had already enveloped Meow Meow's body, and the scepter in her hand also disappeared at the same time the gray armor took shape. A divine weapon was indeed a divine weapon. Apart from being an offensive weapon, the staff of the Earth Goddess could actually turn into armor for defense. Meow Meow did not rush forward because she did not dare. Fear had already grown in her heart, because when Jidong's dual flame monarch body appeared and that wisp of white flame danced, the staff of the Earth Goddess in her hand clearly trembled. As a divine weapon, it had its own spirituality. Obviously, it had sensed the threat brought by the white flame, so the staff of the Earth Goddess had reacted in this way. Meow Meow had already vaguely guessed what the white flame was. How could she not feel fear? The ultimate dual-fire devil master was beyond her imagination. When the ultimate dual-fire devil master still had the fire of chaos, this feeling was indescribable. She had always thought that all her efforts were worth it. Her father, the previous chief of the Demon Alliance, had told her when she was 10 that as the chief of the Demon Alliance, she could never live past 50 years old because their clan had to use their own vitality to nourish the staff of the Earth Goddess. However, she had never regretted it because she felt that it was worth it. A person's life was only 100 years. What was the point of living an ordinary life for more years? It was better to shine with the most beautiful brilliance. With the staff of the Earth Goddess, she had always thought that she was blessed by heaven. Even the elders of the Demon Alliance could not pose any threat to her in terms of strength. Therefore, there had never been any problem with the inheritance of the chief of the Demon Alliance. However, at this moment, the pride in her heart was shaken. Although she had a divine weapon and was blessed by heaven, compared with the young man named Jidong, she seemed to be much weaker. Although he did not have a divine weapon, he had a much longer life than her, and he also had 2 kinds of flames with extreme attributes. He even had his own combination skill, and he even had the fire of chaos. Why did heaven treat him like this? No matter how powerful she was, Meow Meow was only a 21-year-old girl after all. It was unavoidable for her to feel jealous. Glaring golden flames and deep black flames gushed out from the fiery swords at this moment. The difference was that when the golden flames were shot out, they condensed into a huge conical shape, while the black flames condensed into black ice at this moment, as if they were an extension of the fiery shuttle. The Sacred Evolution Flaming Dragon and the Eclipse Phoenix released all their mana at the same time. Black and white interweaved to form a beautiful scene in the sky. It was as if a huge yin-yang fish had appeared in the sky. That's right, what Jidong used were the 2 sovereign skills. They were released through the blaze swords in his hands. He could clearly feel that as the soul fire pulsed, the Flaming Bar's twin swords seemed to be undergoing an extremely subtle change. He released 2 ultimate skills at the same time, but only used up half of his mana. This was obviously due to the effects of the 2 subdivine weapons. When the Flame Sovereign King's ultimate skill, Forbidden 100,000, Brilliant Sun All, and the Dark Flame Devil King's ultimate skill, Forbidden 100,000, Serene Flame Ice, were released at the same time from the Blaze and Blaze swords. He could clearly feel that the two swords seemed to be calling out to each other. His body was surrounded by pure black and white flames. This was the first time that Jidong had released two ultimate skills at the same time. In the past, even when he used the Sun, Moon, Yin-Yang world, these two ultimate skills were released one after the other. It was only at this moment that, under the coordination of the Soul Fire, he was able to release both ultimate skills at the same time. The Dual Flame Sovereign Body released its strongest power. Within Jidong's body, half of his body was Binggu Primordial Yang Sacred Fire, while the other half was Dingxi Underworld Sacred Fire. His entire body was immersed in this strange yet wonderful feeling. Merge Blaze and Blaze swords release the brilliance of the ultimate dual flames. The 9-meter-long heavy sword, along with the brilliant sun, all in serene flame ice, instantly fused into one above Jidong's head. The moment they fused, an incomparably sharp, buzzing sound that seemed to be able to pierce through one's soul erupted from the two heavy swords. Jidong felt as if the soul fire within his body was about to leave his body. The Blaze and Blaze swords were like a giant vortex that devoured all the mana in his body in an instant. His soul fire became the only connection between him and the two heavy swords. It wasn't just the two heavy swords. The 6 dragons and 6 snakes that were supporting the dual flame barrier instantly shattered, transforming into the purest fire elements that surged towards the Blaze and Blaze swords. The Blaze and Blaze swords were like bottomless abysses that devoured their mana. The Eclipse Phoenix Horror, the Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon Mount Eye, and the 5 Grains Liquid were also being devoured. Their massive mana was actually swept away in an instant. The Sacred Evolution Fire Dragon could only rely on its own physical strength to fly in the air. Hua directly returned to the Vermilion Bird Bracelet. Jidong was also shocked. He only wanted to unleash all his power to see what kind of effect it would have. His original intention was to concentrate the group attack of the Sun Moon Yin-Yang world as much as possible and attack the Sai of the Earth Goddess and the 5 Elements formation. However, he had never expected that when the Blaze and Blaze swords were combined, they would produce such a terrifying devouring power. It was an unimaginable devouring power. If it wasn't for the existence of the soul fire, his soul would have been devoured as well. Is this really a power that I can control? Jidong's heart trembled slightly. Even with the support of the soul fire, it was still difficult for him to have enough confidence. The two swords combined, but the sonorous buzzing sound made the 5 Elements' great formation in the sky tremble violently. The combined mana formed by the 5 Elements' great formation couldn't block the sound. The 6-crowned demon masters felt as if their souls had been hit by a heavy hammer. If the combined mana formed by the 5 Elements' great formation wasn't too strong, they might not have been able to hold on. The combination of the two swords emitted an unimaginable sound. The phantoms of the two sovereigns had completely disappeared. However, behind Jidong, a peculiar figure rose up. It was a completely red figure. It wasn't a totem. It was just a fiery red human figure. It was extremely illusory and completely transparent. Looking at it, it looked like a thin layer of mist. Jidong had no idea how this illusory figure was formed and why it appeared. He could only vaguely feel that this illusory figure was related to the Blaze and Flame swords. Moreover, from how illusory this mist was, it could be seen that the mana he released was far from enough to truly summon the power of this phantom. Apart from Jidong, no one had seen the kind of red before. Even Jidong had only seen it occasionally on the flaming bar. This was definitely not the red of the two fires, but a special kind of red. This fiery red figure was 100 meters tall. Its hands were also clasped above its head. In its hands, there was a giant sword of the same color that was 100 meters long, piercing the sky. Jidong was in front of this red light. The flaming bar sword in his hands had also turned a strange and somewhat enchanting red. A violent, buzzing sound was constantly emitted from the armor formed by the staff of the Earth Goddess. She actually felt that the staff of the earth goddess, which had fused with her and was supreme in her heart, was emitting an aura of fear. That's right, this divine artifact was afraid. No, this is impossible. The staff of the earth goddess, you are a divine artifact. How can you feel fear in the face of Ji-Dong's weapon that is only a substandard divine artifact? However, the truth could not be changed by a person's will. In the midst of the trembling, layers of phantom constantly emitted from the armor formed by the staff of the earth goddess, and Xiaomiao's body also kept retreating under its control. In the air, the originally viscous gray mana that was emitted by the divine artifact staff of the earth goddess disappeared like snow melting when it came into contact with the strange red light. At the same time that the red phantom appeared and the red light that was 100 meters long pierced the sky, there was a loud bang. The sigh of the earth goddess melted, and the 5 elements formation disintegrated in an instant. The 25 demon alliance's demon masters and their mounts were sent flying in all directions. All of them spat out blood, clearly suffering serious injuries. However, they were still lucky, because after the 2 swords combined, the red color was not facing them. What they suffered was only the aftershock of the red swords condensing. Who would have thought that just by forming a skill, it had already broken through the divine artifact staff of the earth goddess and the 5 elements formation? Was this really the truth? Even Ji-Dong himself could not believe it. Even though he had released the dual flame monarch body, released 6 5 elements formation, his own mana, the mana of the sacred evolution fire dragon and Ho-Er, instantly rose to an extremely terrifying level. And there was also the power of the 6 dragons and 6 snakes accumulated in the continuation formation. However, these powers added together could only touch the edge of a supreme being at most. However, the bewitching red sword in front of him was filled with a power that Ji-Dong could not understand. It was a power that was on a completely different level from the world of sun, moon, yin, and yang. The world of sun, moon, yin, and yang was a basic ultimate skill, which was not on the same level as the red sword. This proved that the directional attack, that Ji-Dong's 2 swords combined had already reached the level of an intermediate ultimate skill. After all, he was only a 6-crown demon master. The power that he displayed at this moment could no longer be described with the word miracle. If it was not his own power, could it be the power of the dual flame swords? Yes, it seemed that in the instant that the 2 swords combined, the dual flame swords and the flame swords were ignited by his own soul fire. Any thoughts were already denies, because it no longer had any meaning. The red sword finally swung down with unparalleled willpower and indescribable mana. Chapter 275. That strike had used up all the mana that Ji-Dong could use. He could even hear the 2 crystal crowns on the twin radiant gloves of Lunisolar Shatter. Even their mana had been swept away. When the sword was swung down, a strong sense of weakness that he had never felt before swept through Ji-Dong's body. He felt as if he was about to collapse. If not for his astonishing willpower, he would have already collapsed. A faint red light, the combination of the blaze and inferno swords, and the red radiance behind him waved at the same time, creating a dazzling red light that was 300 meters long. In that instant, everyone who saw that scene felt as if heaven and earth had been split apart. All the mana in the air was vaporized wherever the red light passed. All that was left was pure fire attribute. Indescribably pure fire attribute. This was 1,000 meters high in the sky, but when the sword slashed down, the red light disappeared in a flash. A huge chasm that was 1,000 meters long, 100 meters deep, and 30 meters wide appeared on the ground 1,000 meters below. Wherever the red light passed, the sky turned black. Streaks of black lightning flashed in the sky. The sky had actually been slashed apart by the sword. Silence. Complete silence. Ji-Dong panted heavily. Ajin rushed up from behind and hugged him, preventing him from collapsing. The sacred evolution fire dragon's body had clearly become much stiffer. Even flying had become extremely difficult. After the blaze and inferno swords had completed the strike, they had completely fused into his body. He had been pursuing the highest realm of fusion magic, and he had succeeded just like that. Even if Ji Dong gathered a bit of mana and took out a few crystal cores from the vermilion bird bracelet for the sacred evolution fire dragon to eat, he still wouldn't be able to do it. One could imagine the extent of his exhaustion at that moment. Meow, Meow didn't die, and the armor formed by the staff of Earth Goddess on her body didn't shatter. However, there was an additional layer of red light on the layer of gorgeous gray crystal armor. She didn't die not because her strength and the staff of Earth Goddess could block that sword, but because that sword didn't slash at her at all. The blurry red sword streaked across 10 meters from Meow Meow. The moment the red sword streaked across, Meow Meow's body was drenched in sweat despite the armor formed by the staff of the Earth Goddess, shielding her from the attack. For the first time in her life, she felt the awareness of death. She could even clearly understand that the staff of the Earth Goddess would not be able to completely block that sword for her. What was that? That red sword was unleashed by the dual sword harmony. It was clearly a mid-level sure kill skill. Moreover, it was a single target mid-level sure kill skill. What was the concept of an intermediate ultimate skill? This was a terrifying skill that could only be displayed by a supreme being expert. The attack power of a single intermediate ultimate killing skill was comparable to that of an AoE advanced ultimate killing skill. It was true that Meow had a divine artifact, but her magic power was only at the level of 7 crowns. Although the divine artifact could help her transform her magic power to the extreme, she wasn't in existence with extreme magic power. This caused her magic power to be far from enough. The Staff of Earth Goddess was undoubtedly a powerful divine artifact, even above the Thunder Divine Axe. However, Meow Meow couldn't use a super sure kill skill because she didn't have enough magic power to support it. From this, it could be seen that although Ji Dong's 5 elements formation couldn't attack directly, they were very useful. It was impossible to block an intermediate ultimate skill with just a divine artifact without enough magic power to support it. If it was an AoE attack, perhaps Meow Meow still had a chance. However, this was a single target attack. She had no chance at all. Even if the divine artifact could save her life, she would definitely be seriously injured. Even the Staff of Earth Goddess would be damaged because it didn't have enough magic power to support it. Meow Meow was very puzzled. She didn't understand why Ji Dong didn't slash at her. They were enemies of life and death. Of course, she didn't think that Ji Dong's slash had gone astray. That was impossible. Before the sword was unleashed, all of Ji Dong's momentum was completely locked on Meow Meow. It was a feeling on the spiritual level. She felt it through the Staff of Earth Goddess. Although she didn't know that it was the lock-on from the Soul Fire, she could clearly feel that Ji Dong's attack was bound to fall on her. However, the moment the red sword slashed down, Meow Meow clearly felt that the lock-on was lifted. She even faintly saw a hint of meaningful light in Ji Dong's eyes. The next moment, a sense of heat and death that she had never experienced before hit her. It was definitely not a good thing to experience the effect of a single target ultimate skill head-on. The red light on the armor formed by the Staff of Earth Goddess gradually faded. It was, after all, a divine artifact and an Earth-type divine artifact that was best at defense. In the end, the indescribable aftermath of the red fire was slowly melted away. The 25 Devil Masters and their mounts were no longer in the air. Heavily injured, they could barely stay with their mounts and urged their remaining magic to descend. They had no more combat power, so there was no point in continuing to stay there. In addition to Ji Dong and Meow Meow, only the 2 elders of the Devil Alliance were left in the air. The hearts of the 2 elders were beating twice as fast as normal. Their eyes were wide open. When the red sword slashed through the air, they could not move at all. They would probably be turned into ashes if they were even grazed by it, let alone being slashed by it. However, the red sword still slashed through the air. At that moment, they could only rejoice, especially the left elder, who had been fighting with Ji Dong earlier. He could not imagine what would have happened if he had continued fighting with someone who could unleash such an attack. When the 2 elders regained their senses, they immediately went to Meow Meow's side. They could clearly see that the Alliance Master, who was known for being cold and emotionless in the Devil Alliance, was actually trembling slightly. Meow Meow was not the only one trembling. The god of wine, Du Sikong, was also trembling. As a water devil master, his body had trembled uncontrollably when he sensed the indescribable fire attribute energy being released from Jidong's body. When he had seen the five elements formation surround the three of them, he had thought that everything was over and that they would not be able to escape. However, how could he have imagined that the final outcome would be like this? Du Sikong knew that he would never be able to forget the style of that sword. Standing on the back of the sacred evolution fire dragon, Jidong was so weak that he could only lean on Ah Jin to keep himself from falling. Ah Jin's cold armor stimulated his nerves, allowing him to remain clear-headed. He looked at Meow Meow opposite him, but the arrogance in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest because of his weakness. "Can you tell me the name of that sword?" Meow Meow's voice was no longer as elegant and pleasant as before. Instead, it was rather hoarse. It even seemed to be rather difficult for him to say those words. Jidong nodded slowly and said, "Let's call it the Fire God's Void Slash. Thank you for giving me the pressure. Without the pressure from the staff of the Goddess of Earth and the Five Elements formation, I might not have been able to use this skill." "Is this the first time you've used this skill?" Meow Meow stared at Jidong with wide eyes. Jidong smiled calmly and said, "What's wrong with that? I've said it before. God tools are good, but it depends on who wields them." Meow Meow had already recovered a little. "Don't think that you've won just like that. You and your mount are no longer able to fight. The two elders and I can still attack you." Jidong snorted coldly and said, "If that's the case, I'm afraid that everyone in the demonic alliance here, including those demonic masters who have already landed, except for you, none of you will be able to survive." Ajin's hand passed under Jidong's armpit and spread it out in front of him. A trace of mana was injected. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure appeared in the sky again. The aura of the mid-level Gung metal element super sure kill scroll was released. This time, Meow Meow's expression really changed. It became extremely ugly. She really couldn't imagine that the man and woman in front of her were actually so powerful. The super sure kill scroll was something that even the demonic alliance didn't have after 1,000 years of accumulation. Jidong wasn't trying to scare her. If this scroll was released, she was afraid that she could only rely on the staff of the Goddess of Earth to protect her life. But after a large amount of mana was consumed, could she still be a match for the golden armored woman? "If I didn't have a backup plan, do you think that my sword wouldn't fall on you, Leader Meow Meow?" Jidong's proud and was still able to completely suppress Meow Meow, even though he was weak. Meow Meow took a deep breath and tried to calm her agitated emotions. She said, Why didn't that attack just now be used on me?" Jidong said, "Because you didn't order to kill the old, young, women, and children of the Bartenders Guild. And because you just said that the current demonic alliance hasn't done anything evil. You shouldn't bear the mistakes of the ancestors of the demonic alliance. And I also don't want to see a devil master like you, who is fused with a divine artifact, fall just like that." Meow Meow looked at Jidong, and all kinds of emotions flashed through her eyes. She said, "But we are enemies." Jidong smiled and said, "In this world, there are no eternal enemies. Leader Meow Meow, how about we make a deal?" As he spoke, Jidong used the trace of mana that he had just recovered to take out a few high-level fire crystal cores from the vermilion bird bracelet. He held one in each hand and threw the rest into the mouths of Mao Dai and Wu Yangye to help them recover their mana. "A deal?" Meow Meow was startled. She looked at Jidong, not quite understanding what he meant. Jidong nodded and said, "It's a deal. It has nothing to do with the demonic alliance. It's just a deal between you and me." Meow Meow couldn't understand Jidong's sudden proposal. She said, "What kind of deal can you make with me?" Jidong said, "You should know that the holy and evil passageway will open soon, and a new battle between the holy and evil will begin. My proposal is to hire you. I will participate in this battle, and I hope that you will come with me. With your age and strength, you will surely bring a pleasant surprise to the dark magicians of the Five Elements continent. Don't you think that your strength should be displayed on such a battlefield?" Jidong said, "Whether it's the Demonic Alliance or the Devil Master Guild, At least we have a common enemy, the five elements continent. Meow Meow smiled disdainfully and said, "What right do you have to hire me? You want to convince me with just a few words? Why should I believe you? Don't tell me that you mainstream devil masters will accept me, the leader of the demonic alliance, to participate in the battle. As long as you don't say it, who will know that you're the leader of the demonic alliance? I'm willing to keep this secret for you. As for why I have to hire you, it's very simple. I have a reward that you can't refuse." As he said that, Ji-dong transferred the crystal core in his right hand to his left hand. He slowly recovered his mana while opening his palm. The vermilion bird bracelet flashed, and a small green gourd appeared in his palm. The sacred evolution fire dragon slowly flew under Ji-dong's control. It only stopped when it was 30 meters away from Meow Meow. Ji-dong opened the stopper of the gourd. Suddenly, a rich life aura bloomed in the air. One could even see a light green stream of air coming out from the gourd. Meow Meow didn't believe that Ji-dong could take out anything that could move her. As the leader of the demonic alliance, what could she not get? However, when she felt the huge life aura and the incomparably moving smell, her whole body produced an indescribable pleasure. It was like a thirsty person suddenly seeing a sweet spring. What is this? Meow Meow couldn't control her emotions. She took a step forward on the back of the silver bird. Her voice was no longer disdainful, but filled with urgency. In the forest of life of the Easternwood Empire, there lives a race called the Forest Demons. Since you're here to snatch the vast sea fine wine, you must know about the famous wines of the Bartenders Guild. The vast sea fine wine is ranked third in the famous wines. The bottle in my hand is brewed by the Forest Demons for thousands of years. It's a fine wine condensed from the most original life energy of nature. It's ranked fourth in the famous wines, and it's called the Source of Life. Moreover, this bottle in my hand is the essence of the Source of Life. It's refined over thousands of years. If I'm not wrong, you're using your own body to nourish the divine weapon. Your life energy is constantly being consumed by the staff of the goddess of earth. Otherwise, you won't be able to use the power of the divine weapon. Your life energy is constantly being weakened, much weaker than ordinary people. My source of life can replenish the life energy you need. I'll use 3 drops as the price to hire you to go to the holy evil battlefield.